Fab. So, very good morning to everyone to today's Corporate and Communities Overview panel. A big welcome as well to Councillor McVeigh, who is here as Chair of Children and Families. Hello, Natalie. Fab, we have a couple of apologies. We've got Councillor Sam Bafto, Councillor Paul Bennett and Councillor Mark Dunkley. And we've got Councillor Boatwright Green filling in for his member. Declaration of interest. Anyone declaring an interest? We have no public participation. So, over to the minutes. You should have all had a look at these before today. Any of our panel got any issues with minutes? Anything untoward? No. Fab. I will sign those ones. There you are. Thank you. Amazing. So we'll go over to our big substantive item. I think one thing I will say is just how we're going to run today, because I think it's really important we're all on the same page. And I'm going to welcome our officers to do their report. I'm then going to ask our cabinet members even to do their commentary. I'll then open up to our panel, open up to any non-panel members, and we'll have a discussion around that. I think that would be the best way forward. So we will kick off, because I'm sure everyone is excited to go. So yeah, over to officers. Who's kicking us off?
Good morning. My name's Penny Unwin, Head of Corporate Landlord Board. I'll be talking about County Hall. I'm going to talk first about some of the history that's led up to the decisions on County Hall. I'll then pass over to my colleagues in Children's Services to talk about the County Hall feasibility, and then I can tie off any implications at the end for decisions on the County Hall site. So the history leading up to the position with County Hall was covered in the reports to Cabinet in July 2024 and February 2025. But I can summarise those, if you like. So in September 2023, following updated guidance from central government, on reinforced autoclave aerated concrete, RAC, a decision was made to close off and restrict access to the upper floors of the County Hall building immediately below the roof. In June 2024, County Hall was then temporarily vacated. And on the 18th of July 2024, a report was brought to Cabinet, and Cabinet agreed to undertake intrusive investigations, including the strip out and inspection of the underside of the rack panels, and to make a more comprehensive risk assessment on the structural building services, so essentially to make any remediation proposals. They also approved a one-off budget of up to 1.5 million funded from reserves to carry out any remedial work where the inspection highlights that this is feasible, provided that the work would enable the safe occupation of County Hall, or as much of County Hall as was possible prior to it being vacated. The lower floors and around the council chamber. On the 6th of February 2025, Cabinet received an update on those investigations. This report provided a cost estimate to install the proposed RAC remediation solution for the whole building, and that was estimated at that time to be 14.9 million, including an allowance for risk, and a cost estimate of other building condition and maintenance works that would be necessary to be undertaken prior to reoccupying County Hall. That was estimated to be in excess of 36 million over a sort of 10-year period. That's all detailed and broken down in the February report. And on that basis, Cabinet declared County Hall surplus to the Council's requirements and asked for a report to come back in the first quarter of 25-26 to cover proposals for the site. That was the report that went to Cabinet in July 2025. So that report was in 3 parts. It covered Firstly, the arrangements for fully vacating the County Hall site. Secondly, proposals for decommissioning the County Hall. And thirdly, the proposals for any disposal of County Hall site. If I cover the recommendations and decisions made by Cabinet in July. So in terms of vacating County Hall campus, Cabinet agreed that workforce arrangements for office accommodation will continue as they had been put in place when we temporarily vacated. They agreed the relocation of the data centre to Pershore Civic Centre and the relocation of records stored within the record office. Registration service was to remain at the Hive on a permanent basis. Any paper records stored in County Hall would be sorted and moved to Wildwood. And the remaining items, such as other IT systems and so forth, would all be relocated by April 2026. The second part of the report was on the decommissioning of the County Hall campus. So the report stated that we'd reduced costs as much as possible by July 25, and there was a £1 million saving target against County Hall for 25-26. But it did state that whilst services remain within the building, we are required to therefore maintain heating and cooling and servicing of all the plant that supports this. So the proposals were that the majority of these services will be relocated by April 26, and at that point it would allow the decommissioning of the heating system within the building to help us achieve further savings on the running cost of County Hall. The Countryside Centre will also be disconnected from the County Hall supply and install its own supply. Beyond all the activity to decommission as much as possible once the site's vacated, some costs will continue to be incurred until the site's sold. So security, basic power, maintenance of essential items, and business rates. And the report made clear that these will stand until that site is either demolished or sold. The third part of the report then went into the disposal of County Hall campus. The report recommended that some land is retained for the council's own car parking requirements whilst it occupies Wildwood offices. But beyond that, the report recommended that in principle dispose of the remainder of the site except for any further retention for education use, with that decision to be brought back to Cabinet in the autumn, and that's the report that's going to Cabinet on the 23rd of October. The report in July also considered potential uses for the site beyond the council's own uses. These would be explored further during soft market testing and the sort of pre-planning application process. And then it obviously would depend on market interest as well for those different uses. The report proposed that the site is marketed as a whole, but accepting that bids may come forward for elements such as the health or care parcels in isolation, and that by marketing it as a whole, this would be the best way for the council to capture the full value of the proposition, and that there would be a need for developers on the site to work together to achieve planning so that these uses can all come forward. So Cabinet in July gave approval to commence the pre-disposals activities that were listed in the report, such as further surveys, soft market testing, master plan refinement, and planning pre-application advice. that report did state that a final decision would come back in the autumn alongside the feasibility on the use of the County Hall site for education purposes. So probably at this point it's best if I hand over. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Rachel Kiernan, I'm the Group Manager for Education Sufficiency, Place Planning and School Admissions. And I bring forward the Worcester City Secondary report today. We have known for several years that we are forecasting additional requirements for additional secondary school places in Worcester City. Appendix 1 details that for you and shows the forecast that we are presenting to Cabinet this week. We are forecasting a need for an additional 120 places per year group from 2029. That is based on numbers on roll, but also the major housing that is planned and approved for in and around Worcester City. So you'll see that from Appendix 1. Based on that, in July of this year, Cabinet agreed that we would continue to look at options to meet that sufficiency duty. One of the options is, or has been, to deliver a new school, a new 4FE secondary school with options to expand on a site on Newtown Road, opposite the hospital. And that has been considered for some time by Cabinet. The final costs on that are £63.3 million, and that has been market tested. Those costs have been through the market, and we have fairly good certainty that those costs are realistic. 40.2 million of that is to build the school, and the rest of that is land costs and associated costs with delivery of that school. 33.6 million of that would need to be borrowing, whereas the remainder would be funded through basic need grants from the Department for Education, capital receipts, and Section 106 that names the delivery of a new school. Those costs are detailed in Appendix 3 for you. Within the report, we talk about the higher costs and the reasons for the higher costs of delivering that new school, and they're in paragraph 20 of the report. And some of those are to do with some abnormals that are detailed on that site. The timescales for delivering that new school on Newtown Road would require a land purchase in December 2025 and would also require early works to begin in January 2026. And that would enable that school to be delivered for September 2029. The rising costs of that new school do jeopardise the affordability of the whole education capital programme because of the basic need that would be required and the borrowing. Paragraphs 83 and 84 detail how we would have to withdraw or cancel from the presumption route that the DfE, the Department for Education, have approved for that new school. We're in regular communication with the Department for Education, and they do understand why, if that decision is made, that would be required. Other options that we've considered are option 2 is expanding existing Worcester City secondary schools. And through the feasibility that was agreed by Cabinet in July, we have considered which schools in Worcester City, secondary schools, could be expanded. We find ourselves today in the position that the only school that is able and willing to expand currently is Bishop Perrone, Church of England Secondary School. And they can expand by one form of entry, which is 30 places per year group. Other schools, Nunnery Wood, Blessed Edward, Christopher Whitehead, there are a variety of reasons that those schools have deemed that they are unable to expand, and those are detailed in the report. Tudor Grange Academy Worcester have come back to us and said they were willing to continue to work with us. So we don't have an option at the moment that we can present to Cabinet for an expansion, but we are in regular communication with them and hoping to be able to secure some form of additional provision, and that may be mainstream or it may be provision for children with special educational needs and disabilities at Tudor Grange. Option 3 that was considered was County Hall, and a variety of options. You will see in Appendix 2, which is the feasibility report, completed by One Creative, working with us and all of the education stakeholders. You will see in that report the different options that have been considered for County Hall, including a standalone 4FE, so 120 place, secondary school. The costs that have been included in that report are up to REBA stage 1. So that means they're very first estimates based on initial information that we have provided to One Creative and their associated cost company to have a look at what those costs would be. It's very clear that those costs over time in terms of planning, design, would increase. That's important to recognise. But the costs that have been presented in the report today are 43.1 million, without any land costs because it's County Hall, but with a loss of opportunity costs for the sale of County Hall. So that does need to be deducted. So Appendix 2 shows you the options that have been considered for County Hall, including that 4FE school. If a 4FE school was delivered on County Hall, there would not be room for expansion longer term. Other options that have been considered for County Hall are a satellite site for Nunnery Wood Secondary School. So Nunnery Wood is within 0.4 miles of County Hall, for those that are not aware, so it is within walking distance. And we've worked with Nunnery Wood and their leadership team and trustees to have a look at different options for use at County Hall. Appendix 2, pages 28 to 39 detail this, and paragraph 39 summarises that in the Cabinet report. Nunnery Wood Board of Trustees have determined it is not a viable solution for them to expand onto County Hall because it would create significant operational difficulties in terms of pupils and staff needing to transition between the two sites. So for that reason, it's not recommended. The other options that have been considered are the expansion or the utilisation of surplus places at other secondary schools in Worcestershire. So there are some schools included, schools in Malvern, Pershore, that have surplus places that could be utilised to meet the sufficiency need for Worcester City Secondary. So paragraph 46 in the report details the position for Pershore High. Pershore High is due to start to be partially rebuilt under the Department for Education School Rebuilding Programme. And in doing so, the capacity of Pershore High will increase. It will have a 300 PAN, so 300 places per year group. We know that on average, Worcester City is a net importer of pupils from Pershore. So currently, on average, 24 pupils net import into Worcester City on an annual basis from Pershore to Worcester City. That's almost one form of entry, almost 30 pupils. So we do believe there are other options, including Pershore and Malvern. And I'll remind colleagues in the room that in July, Cabinet agreed to utilise some of the surplus places in Malvern to meet Worcester City's sufficiency needs for September 26 and September 2027. So those surplus places are forecast in other areas of the county to be available to meet or could meet the sufficiency requirements for Worcester City. Other options that have been considered for County Hall are to deliver special educational needs provision. So you'll see in paragraph 56 of the Cabinet report and 57 and 58 of the Cabinet report, there are options that have been considered for County Hall to deliver, to relocate and deliver Riverside's social, emotional, mental health special school. That school currently operates from 2 sites in Worcester City that do not allow that school to expand or deliver the breadth of provision that they would like to. So we have considered whether we could relocate the Riverside Special School onto County Hall. Again, REBA Stage 1 cost estimates for that for a 124 place school is £24.1 million, which does exceed the high needs provision capital that we currently have allocated to relocate that school. We also detail in the Cabinet report, the past consultation that has taken place with the community of Worcester City with regards to their preferences for delivering a new school. And you'll find that in paragraphs 72 to 77 of the report. We have continued to work with all of our secondary schools in Worcester City and in the surrounding areas. We had a meeting with them on the 24th of September where all leaders from each school attended and came with them options for us to consider, including the Pershaw and the Malvern schools coming to the table to say they would be willing to look at alternative solutions with us for the longer term. Do you want to say anything? That's all from me, Seb. Thank you.
So if I cover off then what that means for County Hall site, which is the content of the report going to Cabinet on the 23rd of October. On the basis of the recommendations in the sufficiency report, it's recommended to Cabinet the disposal of the County Hall site, with the exception of the land that's going to be retained for car parking. The report to Cabinet also recommends a number of delegations to support the disposal of County Hall site, and they're listed under recommendation B, points 1 to 11. The route to market and marketing strategy should take into account the responses to the market engagement and pre-planning application advice that we receive. It's also noted in the report that Council must dispose of land for best consideration unless it can demonstrate that either it's that it's for the promotion or improvement of either economic well-being, social well-being or environmental well-being. And whilst the timeline to determine the disposal process will depend on the feedback from the pre-planning application advice and market interest and any subsequent planning permission that a developer will need to achieve, it's estimated in the report that the completion of the sale of the site could take place as soon as 2028-29 year. Thank you.
Fab, thank you. So over to our Cabinet members. I don't know who wants to kick us off first. Yeah, Councillor Wharton.
Thank you, Chair. There's not really a lot to add to what the officers have just read out. It's quite clear and concise in terms of the County Hall site, which obviously the area under my remit. It's previously been identified as surplus of requirements. We said we'd do a feasibility study to see if it could be used for educational needs. The feasibility studies come back clearly says no, it can't, and therefore it's just a straightforward decision to get the best outcome, best financial outcome for the council, and that's to sell.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Wharton said, there's not a great deal to add. We proceeded with the feasibility report to investigate the use of County Hall site for education purposes, as at the Cabinet meeting in July, we said that that was the likely second best option compared with in cost terms, in terms of the children using the expansion of Worcester City schools. I'll come on to that in a moment because that hasn't worked out exactly as planned. And the feasibility study, we looked at the possibilities for either a new SEND school, as you've heard, or to provide the satellite provision for one or more secondary schools, the one being Nunnery Wood in particular, or indeed as a mainstream provision for 4FE, 120 places per year group school, So all those options were considered in the feasibility study. The officers have provided you with the analysis and the numbers and all these options from the feasibility report. Unfortunately, all these options are financially infeasible, and in terms of building a mainstream school at County Hall, as well as being financially infeasibility, this would not meet the sufficiency need required for 2029 in any case. Along with the officers, I met with the head teachers and business managers of the Worcester and other secondary schools to pursue options for the expansion of their schools to avoid, where possible, the busing of children outside of their catchment areas. And we will continue to explore these options for the coming year in September 26, as well as all the years beyond, especially for the 2029 requirement, so that we can provide the best possible solutions for the children of Worcester City and of Worcestershire. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we have a range of views on this, so I will kick off to our members. Who wants to start? Councillor Boatwright-Green?
Sorry, Chair. I just need to clarify point 46, because the reason I left the building was just very quickly to go and talk to the planning department at Wychhaven, because as a district councillor, I'm very aware that 28-29 is when Parkway is going to be coming online. So it's going to be a lot quicker than the 2035 that's just been raised here. Just on a quick estimate, so we've got 300 houses around Tiddesley Wood, 100 off Wire Road, 180 off Pinvin, at least 150 off Drakes Broughton, 150 off Holloway, 100 off Rebecca Road. There's 250 potentially off Worcester Road as well. So that's about 1,200 homes that are currently not online that will be coming online. And we're saying that there's going to be space for all of these young people to be bused from Worcester City. Just doing that maths alone, I can say those young people don't live here yet. They won't. I know full well that most of the houses where young people are actually coming into our school system are coming in from outside. So how do we square this circle? Because at the moment, it's saying 2035 is when we're going to be mitigating against the early builds in Parkway, which is not true. It's going to be 28-29. Plus, I've got another 1,200 homes that are being built in the area, and I know that's a low estimate because I know that the district councillor for Drakes Broughton is going to send me a text and a memo telling me that I've undervalued those numbers.
Who wants to take that one?
Thank you, Dan. We do appreciate that Parkway and all associated housing within Pershore is factored into our forecasts. The fact that the DfE are building Pershore High to a greater capacity, we do believe that there would be one FE available for pupils outside of Worcester. We're not proposing that all the 90 children would go to Pershore.
Yeah, of course, please do.
It says here there could be 2 FE, 60 places per year. You've now said 1, and I still don't believe that's right. And I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but I'm just saying, as someone who's worked in education, doing those numbers now, if you've got more than 12 places, based on what you've just said, I'd be really shocked. And you've just said now it's 1, and you've got in here 2.
So there are two FE surplus places at Pershore High. We're not suggesting that that whole 2 FE would be for Worcester City secondary pupils.
Yeah, Councillor. Please do.
Yes, as I said, we're going to work with the schools, or we are working with the schools, to try and make sure that children can go to their catchment area. And in fact, if at all possible, we are working with, for example, Tudor Grange, but we'll continue to work with the other schools so that as fewer children as possible are bused to Pershore, and and as Rachel says, leaves room for the expansion, leaves room for the building around Worcester Parkway to go to these Pershore schools. So it's a long way away. It hasn't been decided that two year groups will be used for the Pershore schools. It's unlikely for that to be necessary for Worcester City Schools.
Thank you. I think as well, I'm just really keen as we continue the conversations to really drill down on what is in the report and not, because obviously conversations can happen, but we need to deal with what is currently happening. Councillor Cross, I have you on my list.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are at a fork in the road here. The County Hall site is an exceptionally valuable land resource. I think there's a risk that if we make a short-term dash for cash, that may not even accrue to us as a county council, but whatever future authority. It's not going to come necessarily in time to save us from financial peril, but what will absolutely happen if we have too narrow a focus on just our own purse and ignore the wider societal needs and growth demands and issues. Because I'm sure we all get questions from residents, how on earth are we going to allow our hospital to expand? How are our schools going to cope with all the new housing being built? Yes, there are allocations within the development plans, but the one thing we can't build more of is land. This is an exceptionally valuable site in terms of location, close to the hospital. There are previous covenants showing the intended value of the land for society, for people, for residents. And I'm just very wary that if we take too narrow a focus, we miss the opportunity. Within local government organisation, we've been talking about costs, and it's important to also talk about service transformation. And we are not meeting the needs of children with high special educational and mental health needs. And we have an opportunity to use this site and perhaps the neighbouring former school site off Newtown Road for purposes that will give a lasting benefit to residents. And if we ignore those opportunities, there will be a huge societal cost, because failure to meet the needs of young people leads to adults with care needs, and these are our two biggest budget pressure items, which absolutely blow the cost of whatever it is for building a school or a special educational needs school, let's say 24 million, into nothing. I mean, if our capital programme is 500 million, where is 11 million? Or where is 24 million? That's the blink of an eye, and it's less than a year's funding. So I really urge that we actually have a proper rethink and a wider discussion amongst all members on this, please. It's impossible to cover this in enough detail within the format of a normal meeting. Thank you.
Fantastic. Anyone want to come back on individual points? I will pick up on that. I think there is a conversation to be had about how we can bring this into a larger forum of discussion. I think a few members are nodding. Anyone want to come back on the specific points Councillor Cross has made? No. Perfect. Karen, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. In July 2025, at a Cabinet meeting, I requested a strategic assessment of education from Worcestershire. I've searched the website. I was told by the Cabinet member this has happened. I can't find a record of that paper and would be very interested in it, particularly in the situation now, which we seem to be doing, treating education in a piecemeal manner. In terms of the finance behind this, I understand the constraints, but from my maths, 63 million to build the school, 40 million of that would actually be the cost to build the school, but the borrowing was 33 million. When I add it all up, I'm thinking, well, where's the money going that was being allocated for education? So I'd like to see a proper cost analysis of home to school transport and the cost implications vis-a-vis building the school. And the reason I say it is we know how the public sector is predicated on capitalising, but I think the gap will be very tight in terms of the differential between home to school transport and building this school under the remit of the public sector building. Now, Parkway. My colleague to my left's just spoken about Parkway, but my concerns are now, without a strategic transport assessment, I can't see a plan for Worcestershire. Parkway, we speak about 10,000 new homes. And when I asked the question of the Education Department, they told me that would envisage 7 primary schools and a nursery, 2 secondary schools, 120 place special educational needs and post-16 provision. You might say, well, why am I so concerned about this? Because the change of government's led to 12,155 homes being requested for Bromsgrove. The special educational needs alone, the requirement to build those houses is 36,228,000. I don't feel that we've got a plan yet again here and how we're going to do it. So there's 2 asks there, a full business case, capitalisation of the school vis-a-vis home to school transport, how we get the best bang for our buck, and the strategic assessment of education across Worcestershire, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor May. Councillor Foster, I think you were directed at one of those. There was a review that was online and conducted. Do you have an update for Councillor May at all?
We work with the officers on an ongoing basis, and it's based on a thorough analysis, including the requirements for Bromsgrove School, and that is effectively a strategic analysis.
Councillor May, are you happy with that?
No, I'm not particularly, thank you very much, Chairman. So the point is here, we're busing children around the county, Withalling to Waisley Hills, I'm told. I've now got Bromsgrove children that are potentially being told you can't go to the school you can see, we're going to have to find you an alternative. I understand the schools are built under PFIs, but a strategic analysis and assessment across the whole of the county is really important, particularly at a time with the changing government when being told to build houses. And how can I raise my hand and say I firmly understand our ability, we have a statutory requirement to deliver education. How can I do that if I can't see a paper before me that clearly has a plan? Thank you.
Rachel.
Thank you. On an annual basis, we report all of our sufficiency needs for 0 to 25, including children with special educational needs, to Cabinet. It's usually February, and we are planning to bring that paper to February 2026 Cabinet.
I understand that, and thank you, Rachel, for that, and thank you for taking us through the papers to you and the team. The underlying issue is here. We're being asked to build 12,000 homes in Bromsgrove alone. There's 10,000 for Parkway. If we can't build 1 secondary school where we own the land, how are we going to provide education across the whole of this county for future generations?
It is a challenge, and grant funding does not cover all of our requirements. We know that. And neither does Section 106 developer contributions from housing developers. We have just, and Cabinet have just approved, our updated education planning obligations policy, which does increase contributions, particularly for early years and special educational needs. That has just been approved and published and is live from the 1st of October. But we have repeatedly informed members and Cabinet that there will always be a shortfall between Section 106 and being able to deliver provision.
Councillor May.
Thank you very much indeed. Does the Cabinet member agree with me the time has come to red flag this to the government? We're turning round now and giving grant funding back and our Section 106 monies. I think the time has come to flag our inability to deliver education in Worcestershire.
Thank you, Councillor May. I think I need to point out at this stage that this is not a political meeting, this is scrutiny on the requirements. I think the officers do an outstanding job to provide the sufficiency requirements and to try and provide solutions. So I would just remind members that when she refers to the issue currently at Bromsgrove schools, which I'm fully aware of, that there are 20 children who have to be bused outside of their catchment area in the Bromsgrove schools, that we were elected in May 2025, and that these issues were not addressed previously by the previous administration.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Can I just say, as I think perhaps my prerogative as a chair, whilst we are here to give a political voice, we are here to give the political voice and the voice of our residents, I don't want us to default to comments on the past administration. I think that's not productive to anyone. Councillor May, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you very much. I wasn't being political. I don't care what flavour the politics are. We have a statutory requirement to deliver education. If you think that's political, then I'm sorry, Councillor, you're completely wrong. This is about our statutory requirement to deliver education in the most fundamental and accessible manner for our residents, rather than bussing them around the communities, which we have in Worcestershire, which doesn't always achieve the best outcomes. So I wasn't in any way, Chairman, being political. I'm stating the facts here. And the facts are, this decision will sit with this administration to cancel this school. If that's the decision you make, that's your decision. But this is for future generations. You can't look backwards, you've got to look forwards. Thank you, Chairman.
Any response, Councillor Foster?
Thank you. Merely that we do meet the statutory requirement.
Can I just ask, before I go back to Councillor Boat, we talk a lot about transport, but I haven't heard a figure of how long young people will actually be spending in transport. Have we got that figure to hand anyone? I'm just very aware that there's a difference between 2 minutes and 20 minutes.
It is very difficult to be able to give an actual figure because it very much depends where the children live in Worcester City to Pershore. But we have got in the paper indicative costs. Over a 10-year period, we're looking at 6.5 million home to school transport costs.
So I just have to push back slightly, just because that I really do think the minute, because there's a value to time spent in transport. Do we have a rough estimate, say the middle of Worcester City to Pershore, how long that would roughly take in traffic? About an hour, I'm being told. Right. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, the 6.5 million, over what period, please, is that?
Over a 10-year period.
Councillor Boatwright Green.
So you decrease productivity by increasing movement. So basically, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is one of the reasons we have a productivity crisis is because people are constantly trying to move around. Young people are heavily impacted by that moving around. And I'm saying this as a former teacher, is that the longer they were usually on buses, the harder it was to actually educate them. Now, I know full well it takes about an hour, if not a little bit more, because I've actually done that very commute myself. So I know that this is an issue. So we're asking 11, 12-year-olds to be commutable between Pershore and Worcester. So we're adding somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour every morning and evening, and the evenings will be a particular challenge. So we're adding 2 hours a day. I've done some rough maths. We're talking about adding about 2 weeks' worth of transportation to their educational career between year 7 and year 11. So why do we think that they should be spending 2 weeks of their life commuting around when actually what they should be doing is playing football, going and learning a musical instrument, doing literally anything but commuting? And I've actually got personal experience of doing this as a young person. I can say now, it does make you knackered.
Any response that might be a politician's response rather than an officer? Councillor Foster?
Yes, I think the worst case is one FE group, 1 year group at Pershore. We are still endeavouring to find Worcester school places for Worcester children, and with one phone call after the previous meeting we had with the schools, Tudor Grange have come forward that they would like to help. We still live in hope that the other Worcester City schools will do likewise. So we're not planning. It will, and it's a long time away. It's 2029. We're not planning to bus many children outside of Worcester City, if at all possible.
Councillor Boatwright Green.
So in 28-29, we are going to have houses in Parkway. I've got that from the head of planning. I've got a text message this morning. So in 28-29, houses will be built. We've got to build 7 primary schools. We've got to build 2 secondary schools. All of this has got to happen, and we know that we don't get enough money from the 106 funding. We also know that we're going to be commuting young people from Worcester past where these houses are being built to Pershore. So at this point, what is our school building policy here? Because we're saying we can't build a school in Worcester. We're saying that we don't have the sufficiency. Are we expecting money to magically appear out of somewhere? Or do we actually have a plan here? Because I'm very confused.
Who'd like to take that one?
For Parkway, we have requested Section 106 to deliver new schools, and we have requested that there is an early delivery of an all-through school to support secondary needs. We know from our forecasting that we do not see a high increase in secondary age pupils at new housing developments. It is primarily early years and primary age children in the first 5 years. The plan would be, longer term, to be able to, as Stephen's articulated, not have many children travelling to Pershore from Worcester City. We already have children travelling, as I articulated earlier, from Pershore to Worcester City. So the aim would be that more children in Worcester City receive places in Worcester City. Some may choose to go to Pershore or vice versa, but we want to limit, with the options that we're considering, as many children travelling significant distances. We can't obviously stipulate that families do not have a choice in choosing those schools.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my question, because Worcester City has schools that are religious. So that's why I see plenty of kids getting on the trains in the morning and heading into Worcester. So what I'm asking is, do we actually, at the moment, have a plan where the young people of Worcester are going to actually end up being off, even if they end up in this all-through school in Parkway? What is the long-term strategy here? Because it seems to be that the Worcester City kids are just getting bused wherever we can vaguely find spaces, which I'm still not convinced exist, at the expense of their time, which I don't think is a valid thing to do to them.
The plan is to continue to work with our existing schools, including our Worcester City secondary schools, to find as many options as possible to meet the sufficiency need for 2029 to 2035. We may need to consider other schools, as we've done in Malvern for 26 and 27, to support that long-term plan.
No doubt we'll come back to you, Councillor Berwick. Councillor Cross, you caught my eye.
Thank you, Chair. I have a comment and a two-part question. It may be that part one of the question is for officers and second for political, but please direct it how best fits. So, comment: yes, I absolutely agree. The call for a strategic transport review. Many residents are complaining about our failure to provide transport for pupils to school or effective transport for pupils to schools. It's bad enough at present to get a bus to school from Warndon villages, especially to Spetchley Road. I've got a handful of people have actually taken the trouble to email me with details. So that's an ongoing question, and I'm happy to work with officers on that. But absolutely echo the call for a strategic transport review, because we need to get this right, because there are so many threats that it costs the local economy and also air pollution problems. So, this is something that affects many people every day. So, the question: am I right in thinking we have a surplus of primary school provision within Worcester City, please? So that's part one, perhaps for officers, but thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there are some schools with surplus places in Worcester City. Some schools, particularly this academic year, have chosen to consult on reducing their published admission number, and therefore we will have some surplus primary school places in Worcester City for the longer term housing growth. Some schools are also considering how they could utilise some of that surplus provision for other provision, including school-based nurseries or provision to meet children with special educational needs.
Thank you. And my question, perhaps the Cabinet member, but again, happy to be directed, is have we, to meet our wider needs, have we considered, rather than just putting off a little bit of a proportion of one school, but maybe actually converting one or more primary schools to either SEN or secondary to meet the needs in a cost-effective manner? So have we considered that, please?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Certainly. The question is, have you considered in detail the cost-effectiveness of conversion of primary school resources to SEN and secondary? Has that been looked into in detail with Officer's help, please?
I can answer that one. So we haven't, there is not a primary school that is closed or does not have a requirement for remaining open. Where schools have reduced their PAN, they may have gone from a PAN of 60 to 45 or even 45 to 30, but there are no Worcester City secondary primary schools that are at risk of closure, and therefore we don't have a vacant primary school within Worcester City that we could repurpose for a SEN school or a secondary school, and there are no primary schools that would be large enough for a 4FE secondary school.
Councillor Croft, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. That feels like a partial response. What I'd really appreciate is a consultation or working with the schools, looking at the resources. What of the current mix that we have could be converted, and would that meet our need in a more cost-effective manner? Thank you.
Adam.
So, just to briefly respond to that point, as fully as I can though, in terms of the 2026 likely February sufficiency report that will come to Cabinet, we'll incorporate that thinking within it. There is another councillor who recently made an approach to me directly on Friday with a potential education solution. Whether or not that in reality is a solution, I don't know, and I'm certainly not referring to Worcester City per se, but from a sufficiency perspective. My point being that from a sufficiency planning perspective on an annual basis, stock standard that we would be looking at that. So in an effort to try and be helpful, come February, there or thereabouts, we'll be bringing that to Cabinet with regard to that sufficiency planning. So with regard to primary school thinking, let's do a review of that, absolutely.
Happy. Fab. Councillor Bales, next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the reports. Very interesting, and being new to this, it's extremely interesting. Certainly on looking at the recommendations, and I back up what Councillor Cross has said regarding the transport needs review. We've got a recommendation in there to approve continued work to investigate the capacity and looking at option 4. That means bussing them, from what I can see, in and out and everything. And I think before we ever get to these positions, we ought to be at least getting those facts before us so we know that that is a realistic option. And where I'm coming next is that we are at a fork in the road. We've got two ways. We're going for, one is disposable of the site, which we've agreed, and that's going forward, am I right? And secondly, we've got another recommendation here to do further work. And I'm just concerned, and I'd like the Cabinet member responsible for education to look at this, because we're asking for further work and a report to Cabinet within 6 months to update plans on this sufficiency secondary education. So the question being, what happens when those reports come to us and we can't fulfil that, and we now need to go to possibly a fallback position, which is the county hall site? And it's feasible that we can do it, and it's in there. We're just knocking it out because of financial reasons, and I think that's short-termism personally. And I've got another question coming on beyond this. So,
Fab. I think if we go to Councillor Wharton on the finance and efficiency side, and Councillor Foster on the more holistic side of that question. So, who'd like to take it?
I'll go first on the finance, if I may. I've listened to the comments and questions from across the chamber, and they're all valid. They're all valid comments and questions. But can I just make a very, very quick and blunt point? something that you're missing a piece here. You're talking about children, absolutely vitally important. And speaking to Councillor Kent last week, he said politics is all about people. Totally get that. Oh, sorry. You're missing the point on finance here. And just to point out the position we're in, this current year's budget has £15 million worth of expenditure in the base budget, and it required reserves, the use of reserves to balance that budget. At the end of this current financial year, we're projected to have £13 million worth of reserves left. 13 million is already a low figure. So we have to take some money out, and yet you're advocating us piling millions of pounds more pressure on that revenue budget for something we don't need to do because we can manage the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, did you want to come in?
Yes, merely that we can meet the sufficiency requirements, we can manage the situation, and I would just mention that in the November council meeting, we'll be bringing forward the internal audit report on external auditor's report of Grant Thornton, which will show the dire position the council is in.
Right. Councillor Bales.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure we are missing the point here. We can go down lines which we then have to reverse without having the real information before us. That's one of our concerns. I think I'd like the Cabinet to seriously consider that. The other question is regarding the July we commenced soft market testing and pre-app advice. Have we got results of that, and what are they? Because I've again got a follow-on question there.
Penny.
Yeah, we're just mobilising to do that now. So the programme is to have that completed sort of the final quarter of 25-26, first quarter of 26-27. I think we said that in the report.
Thank you. So I'd like to see that again. I think I'd like the Cabinet to seriously consider that, because again, we've got no idea what's going to go in here. Have we got a vision here for what's going forward? Have we got a strategy? What do we need in that site? The local authority are going to be the authority for the planning application, so they need to be seriously consulted. What are we going to come up with at the site? Is it in line with what our vision is? We've then gone down the line there. The developers are going to take the view of what they want on this site, not what we want as a Cabinet or as a council members or as my residents. So again, I think, you know, we're getting to a place and we're going down two different lines here, and I'm not sure they're going to quite meet at the end. And I'm concerned that, you know, we need to see this market testing. What are we going to want on the site? And is it right for what we want as a council? Is it going to be long living in there? Are we going to have solar farms in there, which we can then take back after 40 years? Just example, is it going to be industry? Is it going to be housing? It's not part of the housing allocation for what I can see, so it's probably might not be housing. So what are we going to put in there? What's our vision and our strategy going forward? I can't quite see a lot of these answers coming together. It's all, let's get rid of it, let's get the money, and I personally would rather see us getting some of the facts before us before we go too far down this line. And considering where we've been on this for the last 5 or 6 years, to ask for 6 months, I don't think is unrealistic, Chair.
Fab. I think vision is more of our Cabinet members to answer. So who'd like to talk to us about vision?
I think to answer your question, the market testing will give us the answer as to what we're going to use it for. We have a duty to get best value for the value of that site, which we will do. Whether that be housing or industry or solar farms, we don't know. That's the whole point of doing the soft market testing.
Fab, I am just going to go off-piste slightly and invite Councillor McVeigh. I know she's got to dash off ever so soon, and I'd love to hear the children and families' perspective. So I put you on the spot. Are you able to come in and then...
I'm fully prepared. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for allowing me to come in. I do appreciate that not all members of the committee have spoken, so thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me to participate in the debate report this morning, particularly in my capacity as Chair of the Children and Young People and Family Scrutiny Panel. As you can imagine, the decision is intrinsic to the work of my panel in the immediate and long-term future. I'm probably not saying anything revolutionary when I say that not to build this long-awaited school for the Worcester catchment area is short-sighted and potentially catastrophic for the life chances of our young people. But actually, having just heard the Cabinet member speak, he might disagree and think that this was a revolutionary statement. Of course, we acknowledge the dire financial situation we're in, but surely you can't put a price on children's futures. At the risk of repeating what colleagues have said, but I am going to repeat it because it's so important, it's all very well showing the distance in miles to the schools that these children will have to travel to, but how long is it acceptable for a 12-year-old to be sat on a bus travelling to and from school with a day of potentially disrupted learning, depending on whether the buses are running on time, whether there's traffic jams or flooded roads, being sandwiched in the middle? This is a key transition phase in the lives of our young people at a time when their brains are developing towards adulthood at a rate of knots. Any adverse experiences at this stage in psychological and physiological development will have a lasting impact. Can I draw your attention to the bottom of to the bottom paragraph on page 129 when it says, "The review of options could have a potential negative impact due to extended travel times, increased stress, reduce unstructured social and leisure time, disrupt routines, exacerbate anxiety or low mood. Longer commutes may cause fatigue, anxiety and isolation from peer groups. Some pupils may experience difficulties in forming social networks in different locations. There may be a reduced participation in after-school activities or informal support networks." Now, I can't support any decision that leads to these outcomes for our young people. Secondly, picking up on Dan's point in relation to Pershore and Karen's in relation to Bromsgrove, have you taken into account the explosion of house building that we're due in the Malvern Hills, Rushwick, to name but one site, Cales Farm in my Malvern Trinity division? Both of these and more that will come will undoubtedly put pressure on secondary school places in Malvern. The pressure to build from central government is not going to ease anytime soon. Then there are the families who already struggle with making an application for school places. Will they be disadvantaged before we even start, meaning that their children will have the furthest to travel and more stress on their lives and that of their families? Or will they just have to suck it up, so to speak? I urge Cabinet to take on board all of the comments made this morning and please think very carefully about this decision and the ruinous impact it's likely to have. Bright futures are more important than budgets.
Fantastic. Councillor Foster, I think that was probably one for you to come back on if you've got any comments on that one.
I think we're only in danger of repeating what we've already said. Councillor Wharton has explained the position financially that the council is in. I've explained, and the officers have fully explained, and do on an ongoing basis research and speak to the schools, in particular the Worcester schools, to try and meet the sufficiency requirements, and that we've put forward a strategic plan to actually meet sufficiency requirements. What I've actually said is that we will continue to work with the schools to try and reduce the amount of travel on the children and to make sure that most children go to the school which is their catchment area. And as Rachel has pointed out, there are already effectively nearly a whole year group travelling from Pershore to Worcester City by choice, which is something that that we have to allow, which is parental choice as to the choice of school. Thank you.
Before I come back to Councillor McVeigh, I think she asked a very, very specific question that I think I will push back on about that bottom paragraph and about the well-being impact. Can you confirm, perhaps with a yes or no, that you have factored in the well-being by our own officers into your decision?
Absolutely. That's what I keep stressing, is the fact that we will continue to work with the Worcester schools to try and meet Worcester City requirements. And I'm delighted that we're expanding, we're assisting the expansion of the Pershore School, so that they will be able to take in children from the Worcester Parkway build. Absolutely.
So perhaps we're going against recommendation that it's bad for wellbeing. Councillor McVeigh, did you want to come back at all? And then Councillor Turner, I'm on to you.
To begin with a quote from Michael Jackson, I think I'm still allowed to do that. The children are certainly our future. And I'm not satisfied that actually the emotional needs and the physical needs have been properly taken into account of this decision of busing children around the county. I think specifically my points around housing being built in the Malvern Hills area haven't been addressed. They have been perhaps around the Bromsgrove and the Pershore area, but we're expecting housing to be built on the green belt, the grey belt, and everywhere you can put a house, given the government's targets in the Malvern Hills. And I'm really concerned about meeting the needs of the young people in Malvern Hills, let alone Worcester City. So please, can you come back to me on that one, because I couldn't see anything about Malvern Hills in the report. Thank you.
Rachel?
Thank you. We take into account all of the planned and approved housing in all areas of Worcestershire in our sufficiency planning, and in our annual report you will see that by each district and each education planning area. So we do take into account anything that is proposed and approved in that South Worcestershire Development Plan.
Happy, Councillor? No, you're not. No.
I'll leave it there. We all know what's coming down the road, and I don't think that that has been planned for at all. I'll just leave it there, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Chair. Two questions primarily, really. I think all we're doing is keep going around the same problem, and obviously we're here as a scrutiny panel to make sure we have proper provision for secondary and primary educational needs within the county and Worcestershire in particular. Other committees that I've served on, I take the recommendations from the officers very, very diligently, because they're the ones in possession of all the facts, and they're the ones pointing us in the direction in which we should be voting and scrutinising on. Have I got it on the insurance from the officers, first of all, that there will be sufficient needs within the county to fulfil the requirements for the educational needs as they currently stand without the provision of building this secondary school? That's my first question. And my second question is to on the committee members. If we did decide to pull the lever and borrow more money for this additional school, how would this impact on the budget, and would it have knock-on effects within the budget for other demands that the county council have to fulfil? And how would that impact? Because otherwise we're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. So all of the people here to my left demonstrating that we have this desperate need for all these educational needs, what are we going to do when we can't fulfil all these other needs, the requirements? Thank you very much.
Fab. So two questions, if I've got it right. The first one on if we were to remain in the status quo, are we okay? And then the financial pressure one.
Thank you. For 2029 to 2035, we're forecasting a need for an additional 4 FE, so that's 120 places per year group. We have already secured 1 FE, 30 places at Bishop Perrone in terms of an expansion, so we're looking for another 3 forms of entry. We are confident that within the existing Worcester City secondary schools and potentially other schools in the surrounding area, we will be able to identify that 3 FE for 2029 to 2035.
I think that doesn't quite answer Councillor Turner's point of, as we are today, we haven't identified those 3 others. Can we meet our obligation of the 90 additional places?
So the answer, let me try and do a specific answer. No, here and now we can't definitively tell you that. And I don't want to sound repetitive, so please forgive me, but that's why the suggestion in the report that you all have all read is that we come back in February and provide an update with regard to that. That also coincides with the annual sufficiency report that would go to Cabinet. So what you've just heard my colleague say to my right here is that the sufficiency...
Excuse me, can I interrupt? They keep talking behind me. I'm trying to listen to the question and I just keep hearing this mumbling going on behind me. Can we just be quiet? Thank you.
So I pretty much got to the end of the point I was making, and it's the point that I'd made earlier on. So here and now, today, I can't tell you that we will have that sufficiency met without building, this was your question, without building a school on the County Hall site, or indeed an alternate school, Newtown Road, which has also been discussed today. But then I'll revert to what my colleague has just said in terms of our sufficiency planning. We are confident that we will be able to meet those sufficiency needs, but the proof will be in the pudding. That's what we'll come back to around about February next year, to Cabinet.
Fab. I'm going to go to Councillor Wharton now on the finances, and I think Councillor May wants to jump in on a point there.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you. I'll just repeat what I said a few moments ago, actually. There's currently £15 million in our base budget, which is funded from reserves. We ain't got £15 million worth of reserves at the end of this year. We've got 13. So even if we use every single penny we've got and run our reserves down to zero, we've still got to make cuts out of our base budget. As a rough rule of thumb, each £1 million we borrow costs us £70,000 for the revenue account. So if you're looking at borrowing £30 to £40 million, that's another £2 to £3 million per year going on the revenue budget. I've just explained the position we're in. We ain't got any money. We're running out of cash, and we can manage the situation. Perhaps not in the best way that everyone in this room would love to build a brand new school. I'm not disputing that, but we can manage the situation without bankrupting the council.
Councillor May, and then I'll return to my running order.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I just want to bring your attention at the earlier comment that Rachel and the team made was £6.5 million over a 10-year period. So you put that over a 40-year period, which is £26 million. My question is, which I don't see any of these papers, is you're home to school transport now. I don't know what inflation's baked in with that figure as well. I'm not sure it will be for 40 years' time. But it is also about longevity. And when I hear a comment about next February, my proposal is that no action is taken until we have a full business case next February, Chairman, because we can't be making any further half-baked decisions without the full picture. And I go back to my original question, which was, please, for a strategic assessment of the education provision in Worcestershire, a full picture, so that we understand, because with this coming down from the government and these awful housing targets that we're all having to look at, and now potential speculative applications that are coming around the corner in view of the increased numbers and the lack of land supply, and also in my particular case the lack of brownfield sites, so we can only build 200 homes in Bromsgrove, we've got the perfect car crash coming around the corner. And I think with £26 million being spent on home to school transport just for this small sector of our young people, in addition to the mental health impacts, the financial impacts of spending £26 million on busing children over a 40-year period at 225 rates is not getting the best outcomes. And we talk about best value, well, I would dispute that that is a terrible way to spend money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor May. Councillor, did that answer your point? Sorry, I forgot to come back to you. Are you happy?
Yeah, as I say, I think as Councillor Walden has already outlined, if we do go ahead and continue to try and find these additional educational needs, then it's going to create more and more problems as far as the budget is concerned. It is a very, very tough decision that you have to take. I've asked the question as far as the officers are concerned, is primarily have we got sufficient educational facility to fulfil the actual requirement we need to middle to short term. I understand what Councillor Karen May has just said, but you're looking at a 40-year period. I don't think we're looking at that time. Just in the initial medium to short term, we need to look at the finances and make sure that we balance the budget as best we can, and then make further provision going forward sometime in the near future.
Fab. Councillor May, I have you on my list again. Are you happy or no?
I'm still questioning our home to school transport budget and the additional impacts this will have, and I'd like a full, as part of this strategic education assessment, I'd like that aligned with our home to school transport budget so we can actually see the costs of busing children around this county vis-a-vis the cost of buying a school, because if you're going to capitalise this, I think it's going to be very, very tight, if not in favour of building the school.
Do we have those figures, or is that something we can disappear on and find those for our next meeting at all?
The figures in the report are worst case scenario if we needed to transport 90 children for a 10-year period. We don't have I believe, what Karen May is asking for, which is a full review of homeschool transport across the county.
And that is what Karen May, Rachel, is asking for, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen May. Over to Councillor Cross.
I would also voice my support for such a report, because if we're not comparing capital cost versus opportunity cost, we're failing in doing what we should be doing. My question next, there's been public speculation about the potential uses of the County Hall site, including housing, and that's been in the BBC articles from April onwards that I can see. And when one's considering housing, it's always important to also, as part of the equation, look at provision of affordable housing. So I would just, if one is leaving a building standing, that opens, as I understand, an opportunity for a developer to argue for reduction of the percentage of affordable housing that they provide within a development under the development plans and the NPPF. So I would just seek clarification. Is that understanding correct, that there is that risk towards provision of affordable housing, and is that something we are at liberty to discuss in this part of this meeting? Thank you.
I'm looking at Penny, hoping she may have an answer. Oh, Rachel's nodding, so I might go to one of the two of you.
So the recommendation in the July Cabinet report was to leave the building standing and in place and take the site forward for to the market with the building standing. Those sorts of questions will also be covered under the market engagement and the pre-application advice. So final decisions on that form part of that advice.
Happy, Councillor Cross? Or?
I was just wanting to understand, to verify that my understanding of the overview is correct, that I'm not on a wrong footing in suspecting, hang on, the usual 30% affordable housing provision may or may not, whether that is guaranteed if housing were to be used for County Hall site, thinking about societal beneficial needs, or is there a risk that one thinks, oh yeah, there will be 30, oh wait, actually, no, there won't. Thank you.
That would form part of the negotiation between the developer and the planning authority, which would be the City Council. Potentially, but that would form their negotiations, not ours.
Point of clarification, the new housing policy from the National Planning Policy Framework actually stipulates up to 50% affordable on all sites.
Thank you as ever for that clarification, Councillor Boatwright Green, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to clarify a couple of points. The Pershore upgrade for the actual building, it was because we're moving from middle schools in a 3-tier system to a 2-tier system. It is not because we had a sufficiency issue, because there's been a couple of points made kind of by political people here today that we're kind of making use of something that has been a long time coming. And if I remember right, when I was first elected in 2021 was when we were discussing about moving from 3-tier to 2-tier. It has nothing to do with this. We're just sort of bolting it on, which I just want to be very clear, that is not what it was intended for, and something that I know the town is not going to be happy about. The other point made about parental choice, it is their choice, and it's very often for religious schools so that they can actually enjoy their own cultural and potential religious perspective. So when we have people moving or transported from Pershore into Worcester, it's because they're one of the few areas where we do still have Roman Catholic schools and Church of England schools, which is why they do it. So we've got to take that out of this discussion, because actually that is completely irrelevant. That is a parental choice made by the fact that there's people who would like that religious experience as part of their schooling. Now, we have 650,000 a year for transport that's been put down. The fact of the matter is, there is a statutory obligation, we have to provide education for our young people. We have no choice. So saying we've got no money, we can't go to the government, whichever government it is, whoever's in charge, in 2029, and say the words, we cannot build a school. we've already had a conversation here about the fact we've got to build schools, but all of this is telling me that we have no plan to build the schools. And so 27-28 isn't that far away. So I've got to echo this. Why do we not have any kind of widespread plan here? Because at the moment, you're telling me that in Perthshire we've got to accept a bit more traffic and some kids being bussed in, which is not good for anybody. And at the same time, I'm asking questions about where we're going with this, and I'm getting some very vague comments about the fact, well, we've got to kind of do this then, we've got to kind of do this then. There's no money there. So I want, not from the officers, the politicians, how are you going to plan ahead here to make sure that we've got the money that's there so we can actually do our jobs? You can't say there's no money here. We've actually got to build those schools.
Fab, I'll go to the Cabinet members who'd like to pick it up first. Councillor Foster.
Yes, with the help of the officers who've done a thoroughly good job on forecasting education sufficiency, we have planned ahead and we do meet requirements. There is no requirement to build a new school. That is not a statutory requirement. The statutory requirement is to meet the sufficiency need, and we have, and we will, and we should be grateful for the officers for the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think any of us are doubting the work of the officers. They are incredibly hard-working individuals. Was your question about the schools that have already been committed to and how we're going to build those, or just schools as an abstract thought?
We have, this is nothing to do with one particular school. We are going through a period where we've got all of these houses being built. We have maps with 7 primary schools, 2 secondary schools, an SEN school, just for Parkway alone. And we're turning around and saying we haven't got the money to build a school. We're then saying that the requirements from the 106 money isn't enough. We're saying that that 106 money is not enough. We're saying we don't have the money ourselves to do it. So what I'm asking is, it's all well and good, the politicians coming in here and constantly saying we've got no money. I understand we've got no money. I've been saying that for 4 years. It's not new. What I'm asking the politicians here is, what is your plan then to make sure that we have the sufficiency? It's not about the officers. You keep coming in here and telling me there's no money. So what's the plan?
Councillor Water and then Councillor Foster.
The plan is quite simply to get the council back on a sound financial footing, and that's going to mean some difficult decisions in the short term, but in the long term, the authority will be in a better position to be able to do the things you want. Look, you guys on the left-hand side of politics, you probably want the money there to be able to spend on public services. We on this side probably want the money there to be able to cut council taxes. Neither of us can do what we want at the moment because of the financial position. So the plan is to put the council on a sound financial footing, and then we'll be in a better position to do the things we really want to do.
Not sure we need to talk about left and right of the political spectrum. Councillor Boatwright-Green, did you want to... And actually, I think it'd be worth getting Councillor Foster. I know you were reaching for the mic as I cut in there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think there is a plan for Worcester Parkway, and to build the capacity that's required for the developments. As Rachel said, I'm going to hand over to it because I think Rachel can answer this better than I can. There is the Section 106 monies available. She has talked about the requirement for primary school places as a result of the building. So in fact, there is a plan. Can I hand over to you, Rachel?
Rachel, yeah.
Thank you. So for Parkway specifically, yes, we are working very closely with the landowners, the house builders there, in terms of trying to seek sufficient Section 106 to deliver that education provision. That is different position to what we find ourselves in here with a secondary school. The Section 106 that we can allocate to this secondary school is only 4.8 million. When new housing development is built that requires new education provision. So if we talk about Fox Lydiate housing is delivering a new school because the Section 106 is there or thereabouts covering it. It's not fully covering it, and we do have to spend our basic need in advance of receiving the Section 106. So there's still an element of having to use the basic need grant to forward fund, in effect, that Section 106 before it comes in. This situation is very different to the other major housing across the county, where we have a new town, in effect, Parkway. We are expecting those developers in the main to fund that education provision. And you'll see that across Bromsgrove, South Worcester, West Worcester, where we are proposing to deliver new schools. In the main, they are funded by Section 106.
Councillor Boatwright Green, I anticipate you want to come back.
First of all, I think we really need to avoid calling me a lefty, because in my party they consider me quite right-wing. It's maybe just you're so far to the right that you just don't realise. This is really not adding up, and I think really I'm going to have to really echo what Councillor May and Councillor Cross are now saying, is that we can't look at the schools in isolation and areas in isolation, because what we're actually suggesting is we're moving kids around the area, and we're actually adding to that movement around, which means that, and I will hold everybody to this, by the way, I will expect every single now school to be built that's on a new area to actually be built with 106 money and none of our own cash. But one of the things we have to be aware of is that now we've got all this integration, all these complicated factors, I can't see the wood through the trees, because this is telling me things that I've already started to unpick. So I'm going to have to actually join both my colleagues here, which is cross-party, I'd just like to point out, which is very awkward for me. And actually say we do need to look at this from a sufficiency perspective, because I cannot see how this is going to work.
Thank you. Anyone want to come back on that? Councillor May, you can't come back to it. You're not an officer yet. Rachel.
Only that I want to be clear that I did not say that all new schools will be fully funded by Section 106. More often than not, developers will claim viability, we have challenges through that, and so we do have to partly fund from grant funding. But in the main, new primary schools across the county where there is new housing developments are being funded in the main by Section 106. No.
Happy? I'm going to move on to Councillor Bales now.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of order to Councillor Turner on my right. I am on his left, but I wasn't actually complaining about the finance and the financial position. What I was requesting is that we have a school transport provision study, and agree with councillors there, so I do agree with them that. But we are at a difficult position, and I thought that the Cabinet members should be thinking about holding this for a bit longer until we get all the facts in front of us. We've got a disposable site which we don't know anything about at the moment, and it's got asbestos on it. And then we've got more work going into the school. And we've just heard here that we actually have not got the provision coming forward. Can we deliver it? So the point I was making is that can the Cabinet member actually take those points into consideration when he goes to this Cabinet and puts this forward? That's all I was asking. So I was not against that financial position. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, have you noted any response?
Thank you for that. You say we don't know anything about the county hall. We've just followed due process and had the feasibility report, and the feasibility report has pointed out the three options for the SEND school, for the satellite school for Nunnery Wood, and for the full 4FE school. Are all financially unviable, plus the fact, as I pointed out, that even if we were to try and build the school, it wouldn't be available in 2029. So we know lots about it, and as in the previous Cabinet in February 25, we are going to dispose of County Hall.
I think that's a recommendation, isn't it? You know, we'll see how that goes. Before then I go on to Councillor Cross, can I just ask a question perhaps of the Cabinet member, something that's niggled away at me for a while, and I just want to get... We talk an awful lot about not too many children are transported. Can I just ask, how many is too many? Just a number, roughly.
None would be a good number.
So we are busing too many. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I personally feel that we don't really have a long-term future. I heard that, long-term future mentioned earlier, and funding, not just local government reorganisation, but that the writing is on the wall for councils, many councils, around the country, including us. So we currently have the opportunity to deliver a capital project, a school maybe, and to use the county hall site for public benefit. Instead of eking out a meagre existence for a little longer, back to our original comment, we are at the fork in the road. We have a one-off opportunity here, which is going to last longer. The benefits will last longer than we will as an entity.
Fantastic. I think that's more of a statement than a question, but a wonderful statement, as ever, Councillor May.
Thank you very much. And building on that wonderful statement, actually, can I ask Steph Simcox, £650,000 of budget per year to add up to the 10 years, 6.5 million, what level of capital borrowing would that cover, please?
I will get back to you when I've done the maths, Councillor May.
I look forward to it massively. Thank you.
Is this going to be a countdown special and the numbers might be here today, or is that right? All today. Get ready for that one. I now have Councillor Turner.
Yes, I think we can all agree as far as the existing government and their housing targets is putting tremendous strain on all services, and obviously the educational needs in which we're talking about today is certainly one of those needs. And I can only agree to give the children the best start in life is the absolute pinnacle of that commitment we need to fulfill. But I keep going on to the problem is if we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because there'll be other provisions that we need to fulfill with their requirement. And as far as the 106 money has already been explained by Rachel, is a provision for particularly primary needs. And as far as these new housing is concerned, if I'm right in thinking, the main provision would be on the primary educational needs for sort of short to medium term. And again, as far as the site is concerned, the County Hall site, I probably would be in agreement with my colleagues to my left, and that we need to make sure that we probably take a rain check on the outcome of that site until we can properly assess the needs and if there's a better provision rather than probably a short-term financial gain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Anyone want to go back on that one? Rachel?
Thank you. We assess every single housing development in Worcestershire uniquely in terms of looking at whether we can meet the demand of additional pupils from those housing developments. And we do that well in advance, obviously, of that housing being approved or even being delivered. So there is a range of Section 106 contributions across the county, including Worcester City. We have to meet what's called the community infrastructure levy tests, and so it has to be deemed relational to the housing development, the education provision that Section 106 can be allocated to. Previously, pre-2019, we actually had to name individual schools. So we do have Section 106 agreements that name specific secondary schools in Worcester City and across Worcestershire. We would look, and it is, I think it's in one of the risk paragraphs in the Cabinet report, where we cannot expand existing schools, but they have a Section 106 named. We would look to do a deed of variation with the relevant stakeholders on that Section 106 agreement to reallocate that funding so that we do not have to repay that money. But to answer your specific question, in the main, we have more Section 106 at primary than we do at secondary currently. But because we have updated our education planning obligations policy, we do hope that in the future we'll be able to claim more Section 106 for early years and special educational needs provision.
Councillor May, can I just ask Councillor Turner if he's happy?
Point of clarification. Thank you for indulging me. Not all areas across Worcestershire have adopted the community infrastructure levy. I'm not aware that Redditch and Bromsgrove, for example, have, so I just need to make that point clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner, does that answer your question? Are you happy? Yeah. Perfect. Councillor Boatwright Green.
So I'm reassured about the primary schools, and unfortunately though, I'm saying this as someone with a lot of primary school kids in my family, they don't stay in primary school. We'd love them to stay at that age. They're absolutely lovely. Secondary schools then need to be built, and I've now been told that the 106 funding doesn't really cover that. Again, it kind of goes back to my question I asked before. You know, a parent that moves into Pershore now in one of the new estates could easily be in a situation where their primary school kids will be basically into our secondary system by 2028, which is part of where point 46 comes in. We've got a lot of young people coming in. How far into the future are we currently going with our sufficiency reports? Because I've got a massive plan that's about to land in this very chamber for Wychavon that goes up to 2041.
In terms of his sufficiency planning, we use birth data. So we go up to 2035 because that's the children that we know are born in Worcestershire. We can do some projections longer term, and we do that for housing developments. So we do a long-term projection based on birth trends and then obviously taking into account housing. But for element of accuracy, we prefer to use live children in Worcestershire for our sufficiency planning.
In order to seek reassurance, would it be possible for both this scrutiny panel and for the education panel to actually have a look at what we're looking at in terms of where we're heading, even if it is slightly kind of napkin-based projections? Because I think this is something that actually, as councillors, we actually really do need to understand, because this is something that residents are really fearful of, is do we actually have the school places to be able to actually make sure that everyone gets the best possible education?
Fab, and I had an indication during that, Steph, you are the numbers guru now, and you have the answer to Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor May, I think your question was, broadly, how much would we have to borrow for an annual cost to be similar to the cost of the transport? So £650,000 a year is the cost of transport, and that's broadly borrowing cost of around 7.8 million. Now, it's obviously how long do you take the borrowing over, what's the interest rate, but broadly, if we borrowed 7.8 million, broadly, the cost of repaying that borrowing would be £650,000 a year, which is the cost of the transport.
Councillor May.
Thank you very much. So that's roughly about a 5-year payback then?
Yes, broadly.
Thank you very much.
Fab, and at the moment I'm slightly dreading. I'm going to open up to non-members. Councillor Kent, are you waving at me?
I most certainly am. It's quite interesting to hear that answer from Steph, actually, because my understanding over 40 years, it'd probably be nearer 12.6 million. But I want to be absolutely clear, really. What's been discussed today and what we've seen is that this proposal to cancel the secondary school is too significant, too consequential, and too under-examined to be pushed through by executive decision. We're talking about the future of secondary education across Worcester City and, in truth, across the whole of Worcestershire. The implications of this decision will be felt by thousands of families and children for decades, yet the papers before us are incomplete, inconsistent, and in several critical areas deeply misleading. I mean, let's start with the basic of the arithmetic that's been ignored tonight. Officers have confirmed that home-to-school transport will cost 6.5 million over 10 years. That's 650,000 every year. Even at today's higher interest rates of around 4%, that annual sum would service the debt on roughly 12.6 million of capital borrowing over 40 years. We're told that a 60 million school would require 33 million of borrowing, meaning 27 million is already available. Add the 12.6 million that could be financed from the transport revenue, we're within less than 4 million of closing the entire capital gap to the 43 million quoted for a new school. In other words, if we stop busing children around the county, we could afford to build the school here in Worcester. That's the simple, irrefutable maths of this decision. Yet despite this, the administration insists on cancelling the project while spending millions moving pupils instead. It's an economic absurdity and an abdiction of duty, and to be honest, I think the Cabinet member should probably be replaced. I've identified close to 60 detailed questions that remain unanswered in this report, and I'm sure the chairman wouldn't want me to put them all to him at this particular point in time, because we might not need just lunch, we'll need tea, dinner and breakfast. There is no modelling of the full 40-year transport costs, no clarity of how millions of pounds in Section 106 education contributions, which has just been raised, already secured from developers. There's no guarantee that money, if you change this and cancel that school, will be forthcoming. You could be throwing away cash that is there to pay for their education, will be used or protected, and no reconciliation between the Cabinet's claim of unaffordability and the same Cabinet member's public statement that local government reform would deliver far higher savings than currently modelled. We all heard David Taylor at OSPB this week say that he believed the 20 million forecast was far lower than he can achieve. So I could ask, has that been modelled into this? Because I actually agree with him on that. I do think we could save far more. The so-called 33 million borrowing reduction is a false economy once you account for decades of transport expenditure. The potential loss or clawback of Section 106 money and the growing risk of breaching our sufficiency duty under Section 13 of the Education Act, this proposal ceases to be saving at all. It becomes a long-term financial and statutory liability disguised as prudence. County Hall, meanwhile, already has the infrastructure every new site would have to pay for. Everybody in this room that was in the previous administration knew that I wanted to put a school on that site for several years. Yep, even before it found the rack, it wasn't fit for purpose. It has the highways, the access, the power, the drainage, the parking and the broadband. The council's own feasibility study shows it could deliver a school around 20 million cheaper than Newton Road. Yet that option has been summarily dismissed without transparent justification while the building sits racking up business rates, security and maintenance costs every month. If the administration generally wants an immediate saving, there's a brutally simple option. Demolish County Hall tomorrow and stop paying business rates on a half-empty building. Because right now we're doing the worst of both worlds, refusing to use the site for education, but continuing to pour money into keeping it empty. And let me say this, what's happening here, as we've heard from other councillors, is not confined to Worcester. In Withall alone, in the last 3 weeks, I'm facing 3 speculative housing developments on top of the housing put forward in the plan. And that cost is horrendous. The pattern's repeating across the county. We approve housing, pocket the developer contributions, and then refuse to build the schools these families will need. This decision in Worcester exposes that county-wide failure of planning more starkly than anything else. This is not, Chair, how responsible government operates. The absence of full financial modelling, the risk to legally bound developer contributions, the lack of consultation with parents and schools, and the ongoing waste of public money on a vacant county hall all make this a decision that cannot credibly be taken by the executive alone. I therefore formally call for this matter to be referred to full council or a detailed investigation prior to that. Every elected member from every district and every party must have the opportunity to scrutinise the evidence, challenge these assumptions and decide in public whether this administration's approach is lawful, affordable and morally defensible. Anything less would be a dereliction of democratic accountability and a betrayal of every family who expects their children to be educated within their own county and community. I had a reasonable conversation with Councillor Wharton last week, and he referred to it at the start in terms of we are here representing people. Now, I can understand if you come in as a businessman, because I did once, finance and generating income, that's what you believe you can do. But in reality, we have an absolute fiscal and financial and moral duty to our residents to serve them and give them what we need, and we must do that.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. A broad range of questions there that I hope are going to filibuster whilst people are generating answers over here. And I'm looking maybe at Hazel because there was a question regarding a mechanism to take it to full council, and I am going to pop you on the spot ever so slightly. Sorry.
Sorry, is that my phone? Yes, so one of the mechanisms of call-in is there could be a recommendation to refer a meeting to full council. Obviously, we'd have to have due regard. There is statutory guidance for scrutiny panels on when it is appropriate to refer something to the council meeting. My role is very distinct to that of the statutory scrutining officer, so you probably would need advice from your statutory scrutining officer as to whether or not that is appropriate. I haven't had a chance yet to look at our constitution, but there is definitely reference in there. So I'd have to consider that further.
I'm more shocked you don't know the Constitution off the back of your hand. I'm going over now to the Cabinet members and then to officers to perhaps address some of Councillor Kent's points. Perhaps Councillor Foster, you'd like to kick us off.
No, I think I prefer Councillor Wharton to kick us off with the finances.
I'm not sure. Were there any questions on matters of finance? I know you questioned the officer's calculations on what level of borrowing £650,000 a year would enable. I didn't understand when you talked about your figures, you ran down to a £4 million gap. So if you could go over that again for me, please, and show your workings, for want of a better word, because I didn't quite understand how you managed to close that gap. But other than that, I didn't actually hear any questions on a finance nature.
That's fine. Councillor Kent, as plainly as you are possibly able to, could you pose some questions to the Cabinet member?
Of course. Earlier, Rachel said that to fund the 60 million Newton School, it would require 33.3 million of borrowing, which basically rounding, let's say it's 33 million. That gives you 27 million available through grants and other forms of finance. And I presume that 27 million includes Section 106 funding that's already been secured, and more could be brought forward in terms of the housing sites that we've already got. Now, depending on how you work it and what interest rate it is, I mean, obviously we're at quite high interest rates under this Labour government at the moment. It may well go down, perhaps, in which case we could fund more borrowing. But at the moment, at 4%, £650,000 over 40 years, which I would say would be a reasonable lifetime for a school, would fund 12.6 million of capital borrowing. So if you add that 12.6 million to the 27 million, and I'll call the 12.6 13 for the ease of maths for everybody here, that equals 40 million. So I was actually incorrect. It's actually only a 3 million gap to the 43 million pounds that they've said that the school on County Hall would cost. So I'm absolutely bemused. I'm not sure whether in these hundreds of pages somebody's missed something that is so blatantly obvious it's untrue. But basically, Councillor Wharton, you've made the case here for building the school on County Hall and not having a high cost of revenue in terms of the home to school transport costs, which we already know is out of control. So why don't we just build it?
Before I come to you, Councillor Wharton, Hazel has waved at me slightly frantically. And so, Hazel, did you want to come in there?
Yes, just having consulted with Steph as well, I've remembered that the issue of the capital programme and changes to it is a matter that has to be agreed at council. We've got the 6th of November council meeting, and there's probably a finance report there which would make a recommendation to vary the capital programme, which would include the spend on the new school. So there would then be an opportunity at the council meeting for consideration of that.
Fab, thank you. Councillor Wharton, are you happy?
Sorry, Councillor Kent mentioned a rate of 4%. I've just clarified with the officer that our consolidated rate of the interest at the moment is actually 6.2%. So that will probably fundamentally change your calculations.
No other comment on Councillor Kent? No, that's fine. Councillor Kent?
Right, so there isn't, even if we went with a higher interest rate, which obviously nobody expects to be sustained over the period of 40 years, well, I certainly hope so, otherwise the country's going to be in an even worse mess than it is now. But really, obviously, you would have to take a view. I mean, I know what you're saying, what the interest rate is today, but obviously we've got a Labour government in power at the moment that is just running ragged. So effectively, whether it's, I don't know, 8 million or 12 million or whatever it is, the gap between building this school and something else could easily be financed with other financial changes that the administration could decide to do. Now, there's other capital projects in there, they could be delayed, there's all sorts of mechanisms there. I don't think this has been properly thought through in any way, shape or form. I think the finances are there to build this school within the existing financial window.
Fab, thank you. Councillor Foster, I know you kicked the ball. No, we don't want to kick it back.
No, I think we still need to, Councillor Wharton, answer the question on the finances.
Gosh, it's been kicked back to you now, Councillor Wharton.
Cheers, pal. I've got nothing further to add. I mean, I've explained again and again the financial position of the authority. And just so it's not just me saying it, I've just got the auditor's management letter here for the statement of accounts for 24-25. Finding, the council's financial position is not sustainable in the medium term without reliance on EFS. Recommendation, the council needs to work at pace to address its significant budget pressures and reduce reliance on EFS and its very limited reserves, and agree a reserves replenishment plan. That's what we're doing.
Gosh, I think that's... Oh, yeah, Councillor Foster, the ball is back in your court.
Yes. I'd just like to comment again on the finances. I think Councillor Kent's understanding of the finances are absolutely incorrect. I can quote what he said, not word for word. I will at the next cabinet meeting, if he persists on this line. I will quote what he said verbatim at the last council meeting. But he said, roughly speaking, if we were to default on our debt, we would leave the government with the money that they should have given us in the first place, as though it all goes round in circles. That is not the case. If we were to default and we issue a Section 114 notice, which is obviously what Councillor Kent would like us to do, then the commissioners would come in, and the first thing they would do is raise the council tax to 10%, which is not, as I said at the previous meeting, what the residents of Worcestershire would like us to do.
Thank you. We dual hats there, economy and education there. I appreciate that one. Councillor Kent, you were frantically glaring at me there.
I'm a little bit in shock, really. I mean, they haven't addressed the fact that what I've actually said is within our existing financial window, with a £650,000 minimum that we're talking about in terms of home-to-school transport costs, the gap between being able to build that school with far better educational outcomes without the kids having to spend 2 hours a day on a bus for years of their life is within that window. So it might mean that other staff need to be changed. In terms of bringing in the commissioners and in terms of funding, we all know what the problem for this council is. Special educational needs, home to school transport, which inexplicably you want to increase, children's placements and adult social care. It's been totally unfunded for a number of years, and I'll talk about the previous government's administration as well as this one. They've let us kick it down the road with a high needs DSG grant growing all the time. The fact is, we are here to deliver what the residents need. And if Reform truly believe that what the residents want is their kids on a bus for 2 hours a day, for 7, 8, 9, 10 years or whatever it is, then why didn't they just say so? Because I didn't see that in the manifesto. I saw council tax cuts and the boats being stopped, neither of which I can see at the moment.
I believe that's a political comment. Any cabinet member want to quickly, briefly touch on that, or I might go to officers as well for...
No, we'll address that at the cabinet meeting on Thursday.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. We do have others. I will just note, though, paragraph 72 in the report that said that the public consultation was that they wanted a new secondary school. I think that's perhaps the will of the people. I have Councillor Jenkins, who's always welcome at our panels.
Thank you very much, Seb. Hello, everyone. I think most of what I was going to say has probably already been said. I'd like to start just firstly with, as a local member for the one school that is planned to be expanded, which is Bishop Perrone. So just firstly, kind of question around that, because obviously, as I understand, the head is in favour of doing that, but that school it's got a much tighter area than, say, the building at County Hall. It's a very tight space in that school. They'll be building over probably a hard-standing play area, and they've got limited play area as it is. So I think, firstly, that to me as a local council would be a very bad decision. Add on the fact that you've got basically 2 primary schools in the area, one of which is next door. We have huge congestion problems on that. It's a kind of narrow road, pretty narrow road with lots of cars coming and going, no real buses at all in that area. So firstly, I think that is a bad location for a school. We've heard from my colleague next door and others about basically you could not spend that money. That creates the money you could then put towards building a school at County Hall. So if you knock down County Hall straight away, you'd have that available when we have to wait anyway till February for this sufficiency report to find out exactly what's going on. If we need 4, by the sound of it, we need 4 formentary in Worcester. We have a site which is available where you could build a form formentary in Worcester. And the trouble, I think, where the cabinet members are really struggling is their focus is totally on finance. I can understand Councillor Wharton, that is his cabinet role, but the fact that the cabinet member for education keeps mentioning about finance is his priority, not education and the best outcome for pupils. And I think that is the problem. Basically, we have a statutory requirement to provide these places. The best place to put it seems to be at County Hall. And I think the issue is it's up to Reform to work out how they're going to do that. If they want the best outcome for pupils in Worcestershire, it's basically all pointing towards using the County Hall site. Therefore, that's up to you to work out how to do it. You can clearly, we've been given help and examples of how you can do that, but I think, and basically to sum up, last point is I think, yeah, delaying this decision until at least February when we've got an idea of numbers, we clearly say we've only seemed to have one FE in Bishop Perrone, which is a bad location. Therefore, to me, we haven't got any real decent options. Therefore, it's pushing everything towards County Hall. So I think what I'd ask the Cabinet members and maybe officers as well is maybe to actually rethink, have a look at this again. I think as Councillor Cross mentioned right at the start, we're in the fork in the road. We've got a choice, one way or the other. Take a short-term financial decision or a long-term what's best for residents. And I think building at County Hall is the best option long-term for all of us residents. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Councillor Foster, did you want to come back on that one in terms of the education part, and then I will go to officers to talk about that.
Thank you for Councillor Jenkins. Yes, education is, as far as I'm concerned, that's my portfolio, is the most important thing. But which is why we sanctioned the feasibility report. We followed due process for the feasibility of County Hall for use in education for the three possibilities: the satellite school, the SEND school, or the full 4FE school with 120-year places. Unfortunately, it's not viable, financially viable, and furthermore, it couldn't be built in time for the need in 2029.
Going to go to the officers now. Rachel, maybe, or Adam, I saw you leaning there.
So I guess just to say, I mean, these are issues that we've spoken about earlier on, and I will tread carefully here and talk strictly from an officer perspective. So the facts are, with regard to County Hall, the 43.1 million, that's Reba Stage 1, that's a fact. The facts are with regard to Newtown Road, and I can't remember the starting costing for Newtown Road, but it was around about 40, there or thereabouts. That jumped around about 23 million, there or thereabouts. So I think it's safe to say that the 43.1 at this moment in time at Reba Stage 1 is going to go north of that figure. So I think that's a fairly safe fact. I think the other issue that's pertinent, which is important that people understand, is that Nunnery Wood, which is a stone's throw away from the County Hall site, both from their perspective with regard to a potential satellite site being built on the County Hall site, and indeed their perspective with regard to a potential new secondary school, are absolutely clear. They don't support either. That's their stance. And I guess the third point to raise is the highways issue, which here and now I can't articulate in any meaningful way whatsoever, but the highways issue, were there to be two secondary school sites being linked via Pershore as well, Pershore Road, sorry. So in terms of the timescales, 2029 is what is accurately written down in the report, but that is a tenuous date. It really is. I think that would be a bit of a wish and a prayer that we would hit the 29 period. I hope you appreciate that's, I'm trying to convey as close as I can statement of facts, obviously not political opinions.
Beautifully navigated as well, I will comment. Councillor Boatwright Green, I've got you next to my left.
Seb, could I just quick response?
Of course you can. Sorry, I missed you there.
Sorry, Councillor Cross. As group leader, I can do what I like. Sorry. All right. Yeah, just in response the paper says it won't be ready, new school at County Hall by September 29. In the detailed option 1, it says it'd be ready by the 5th of October 2029. I mean, you know, you're talking a few weeks here. So I think the idea that we couldn't build it in time seems to me unrealistic. I think you could. If you really wanted to, you could. Thank you.
Fab, thank you. Councillor Boatwright Green, over to you.
And I'm not going to mention the fact that someone's put a W in my name in this report. Just a technical question. Point 70 mentions that there's committed costs of £700,000 in addition to the total expenditure of the project already of 3.3 million. So does that mean then we're basically flushing £2.5 million down the toilet when we basically cancel this? And then I've got a follow-up.
I'm looking over here. Rachel's issue, yeah.
So currently there is 3.3 million expenditure on the plans for the Newtown Road Secondary School, and we expect another 700,000 in committed costs. So we're talking 4 million expenditure. The majority of that would not be able to be capitalised if we were no longer to deliver on the new school at Newtown Road, because the plans, planning permission, etc. could not be replicated for another site.
Yeah, go back on that one, or? Yeah.
So if we're cancelling a school and we're saying, right, we're moving on, because obviously with anything like this, you know, there are kind of opportunities usually to do something. What we're basically doing is we're writing off £4 million then, is that right?
That would be correct.
Councillor Boatwright Green, are you... I might actually take the Cabinet member's view on that. Writing off 4 million when we're in choppy waters doesn't seem the best course.
Yes, absolutely, you're correct. But just because you've got to write off 4 million doesn't mean you plough on and waste many millions more. It's not an ideal position, absolutely. But to criticise us for writing off £4 million, but then advocate that we pile millions of pounds more into the revenue budget, just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't think anyone's criticising. I wouldn't be bold enough to criticise any colleague. Councillor Boatwright Green.
I think what might be quite useful, because I'm literally asking questions here, that's all I'm doing. It's fact-based. I would like to actually, at some point, as we go through this process, not just with this, but I think we actually need a list of, as we are cancelling projects or moving projects around, actually what we are writing off, because I think one thing in isolation might be okay, I'm not suggesting this is, but actually if we're going to start seeing a series of projects being cancelled, we're going to actually need to see the cumulative effect. So I think it'd be quite useful if we can make sure that that definitely, especially at audit, that is very clear to people what exactly we are writing off. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a reasonable request, absolutely.
Oh, yes, Councillor Foster.
Yes, back on the finance is amazing. We've made it perfectly clear that we're writing off that £4 million. Should we take the decision to cancel the Newtown Road school site? And the clarification of the numbers, the borrowing that was going to be 33 million is now in this report is now 36 million. The basic need was 13.39 million comes from the DFE. Capital receipts 10.7 million pounds, and S106 monies towards the Newtown school would have been 4.81 million. That is all the developer's contribution would have been.
Thank you. Chair. Thank you. And again, that dual hat is coming in such wonderful use, isn't it, with the economics. I'm going to go to Councillor Turner next, and then Councillor Kent, you can go after Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me for my naivety, but when coming on to these scrutiny panels, I'm assuming it was to be on a non-partisan basis and purely for the benefit of the residents that we represent, to find the best outcome for this particular proposal. all I can see to my immediate left here is an opportunity, possibly as an Achilles heel, to let's try and press this pressure point as much as we can to make political gain out of it, which is, in my opinion, not really the benefit of what we want as the outcome of the council. I've already asked the question to the officers, have we got sufficient need? Then they've assured me that there are, and I've asked the committee members, the cabinet members, if we did push ahead and borrow this money, what outcome that would have on other services, and they've already outlined that. But we continue on with this pursuit of trying to make political gain out of this particular decision. And to my rear here, Councillor Kent wants to take this to the full cabinet meeting, and we know obviously if that was pushed through, the outcome of that. I would dread to think what your credit cards must look like if you continue to try and
Thank you,
pressurise
Councillor. I think the point has been made. I would argue scrutiny is there to reduce the amount of Achilles heels this authority has, and I take your point, but I would just remind you that is our function here, and I think until every member is satisfied, we will continue to scrutinise. Councillor Cross, I think it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I still struggle to understand how there is not a business case for building an SEN school. I mean, if we're spending £16 million annually on home-to-school transport for children with special educational needs and disabilities, that's about £1.33 million a month. And according to our SEND sufficiency report from 2024, as of early 25, 1,853 children and young people are receiving home-to-school transport, and a significant proportion of these are being transported to specialist education settings outside Worcestershire due to insufficient local provision for certain needs, particularly ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, and social, emotional and mental health, or SEMH, needs. So this highlights that out-of-county placements are a major driver of rising transport costs and logistical challenges. And whilst the exact number of pupils transported specifically outside Worcestershire is not directly stated, the report confirms that children and young people with SEND who live in Worcestershire but attend a setting outside the county will also be excluded from Worcestershire's census. So again, there's a gap in our information. But it is clear there's a notable cohort of Worcestershire resident SEND pupils who are educated out of county, and many of these require specialist and expensive transport support. So if we say that a new school, build cost, let's say on County Hall site, £25 million, figure out the blue, but it's a starting point. Based upon annual savings, if we say, instead of it being half, 50% reduction of the transport cost, if we dial it down to just 25% reduction in transport costs, so £4 million saving and a borrowing cost of 4%, the payback period for a £25 million SEN school investment is approximately 8 years, I reckon. So please, my question is, can we look at this properly? Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. We've discussed this before, and I'm in complete agreement with you, as I was the previous time we discussed this. I refer you to my previous comments at the first council meeting, which was that Jade Bliss, in conjunction with Ed Francis, who's a wonderful head teacher at Fort Royal School, and with Ms. Dorman at Regency High, did a wonderful proposal, a business case on home-to-school transport for a savings with a shorter payback than I think you estimate, Councillor Cross, which is what I said to you at the previous meeting. I would be delighted to build such a school. And what I said to you at the previous meeting is, as soon as the council is financially viable and that our chief financial officer is not calling in a section 114, as soon as we are financially viable, and that may be after we become unitary, but as soon as possible, we would love to build a SEND school because there is a sound business case. Thank you, Chair.
I think an inadvertent assumption, but I don't think a 114 is in the process of being called in. I'm looking at colleagues in case I've missed anything. Sam? Steph, that's a firm shake of the head there. So maybe we don't base responses on that. Councillor Boatwright-Green, you... just your mic, Councillor.
So we can't do all these things in isolation. I just want to back you up, Councillor Cross, because actually, just having looked at this, option 6B, new SEND school, new building, about 30 mil, it's going to save us that money. So I'm a bit confused as to why we don't have a project in front of us for option 6B saying that actually we can build a school here, save all that money, which then takes the pressure off. And just in relation to how that would be a political question, if you'd like to explain to me why asking that question would be political, if I'm being overly political, that would be fantastic.
Anyone for that one, why there is no presentation on option 6, I believe was the question there, Councillor Boatwright-Green. 6B, thank you.
Can I point of order here? So we've asked a question about a strategic educational approach. All of this leads back to the same position. Where is it, please? Because we can't just keep picking off items to finance. We've got to have a strategic approach.
So I think an officer question there about option 6B, and then a cabinet member question of Councillor May of where's the plan, where's the vision. So Rachel, can I come to you first?
I can probably answer both in my response. So we have a high needs provision capital plan, and within there we have allocated 6 million of high needs capital provision to relocate and expand Riverside's social, emotional, mental health special school. The indicative costs to deliver a new special school on County Hall are 24.1 million. So we do not have the shortfall between the two to deliver that new school on County Hall, and that is part of the strategic plan.
Councillor Wharton, I think there was also a political question from Councillor May about vision, and perhaps Councillor Boatwright-Green as well there, if you want to.
I think I know I've answered this question in I think every single meeting I've attended since I've been a councillor. The immediate plan is to resolve an extremely difficult, challenging financial position. Once we've done that, then we can look at the things we really want to do. At the moment, we're doing the things we have to do.
Councillor May,
thank you, but we have a statutory requirement to educate young people, and all I'm asking for, I'm not being political, I want to see the plan. I want to see what you're doing aligning to housing growth over the longer term. Our housing plans have to go to 2043. 2027, 28, 29, it means nothing to the people, the future generations. And I'm asking for confirmation how you're going to address the educational requirements up to 2043 and beyond. Thank you.
Colleagues, Adam.
I felt the compulsion to stick my hand up because everyone went quiet. From a sufficiency planning perspective, this is the point that Rachel answered earlier on, to a degree. We will do that on the basis of birth rates, and that will take us through to 2035. That will be reviewed, that will be updated. We'll have that at Cabinet on or around February 26. I think this conversation came up earlier on with regard to exactly what it is that you're talking about. And I can't remember who it was, so forgive me. I think it may have been you, who suggested, even if it's a bit of napkin planning, that takes us through to 2041, 42, which I think is what you're referring to. So there is no reason at all why we can't incorporate that, albeit with a caveat of napkin planning will not be as comprehensive as our ordinary sufficiency planning, but we can incorporate that into our annual review strategy.
Fab. Napkins out by the sound of it there. Councillor Costa, I do apologise, I didn't come back to you. I'm awfully sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I had a supplementary question. Thank you, Councillor Foster, for agreeing the point I was making about there being a decent business case and the financial soundness of this proposal. My understanding is that where there's a short payback period on a project, that actually results in a net saving in the medium to longer term. So not acting is costing us more when purely looking at the the actual outlay and capital costs. But then actually, failure to act costs us more in terms of the adult social care pressures. Pupils who get failed and whose needs are not met as youngsters, as adults, and we hear this through our other scrutiny panel, adult care and well-being, leads to huge costs for our council. And it feels like there's sort of a left hand and a right hand that just isn't looking at each other or working together and coordinating, because this can't wait any longer. Whilst we have opportunity to do this, let's do it. We've got money from the abandoned Newtown Road project. There's funding available that can crack on and do. And whilst County Hall is even still standing, there are sites that can be parts of the wider site that could be used. Thinking about the Newtown Road area, it went through planning. Why can't it be an SEN high needs unit? Let's sort out the transport, make that a little bit better, so we're not impacting local residents with fly parking, etc. But there's something really not adding up here, and it's worrying. So, please, could you? Yeah, let's see the strategic approach to this. Let's see how we can have an invest to save. Can we just get on with finding ways to actually achieve a net saving and net improvement for people? Thank you.
Possibly a comment more than a question. Happy with that? Yeah. Councillor Kent, you were waving at me.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Councillor Foster for making the gap even narrower. The figures he gave out were basic need 13.3 million, capital 10.7 million, and section 106 of 4.8 million that could potentially be lost if we cancel this school. That comes to 28.8 million. Now, on my back of the fag packet, and I appreciate that, capital costs to do the 12.6 million, comes to 41.4 million against a proposed REBA 1 quote of 43 million. Now, I notice the Director of Children's is now an expert in building, and I won't hold him to that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we've got high interest rates at the moment, high costs of employment and everything. There's nothing to say that the costs of building in the future might go down. But really, what Councillor Foster has pointed out is the gap is between the 43 million in the papers and the 41.4 million that has been confirmed as available effectively in the numbers. This is not, I'm with Councillor Cross here. I have absolutely no idea why you're taking this decision. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think it's just because you're fixated in the saving of the capital borrowing, really, and you're not thinking about the revenue cost of the home to school transport that could otherwise fund it. Now, Councillor Cross also raised a really interesting thing with SEND. Why can't we look at a 4-form entry and some SEND provision on this school? I'm not saying a full school, but as an alternative, that could really bring in that sort of spend to save type element. So forget the politics. This is basic maths. We're talking about education here. I think most of us could go do it in a class.
Thank you. You say save the politics, but I am going to go to the politicians for a response. Unless, our resident builder, no. Councillor Foster, do you want to come back on that one?
Yes, the figures I quoted were the £36 million borrowing. We would like to take that out of the capital plan because, in actual fact, Phil Rook, you're quite correct. We're not calling in a section 114, nor are we expecting to in the near future, or in fact in any future. But if we were to borrow that significant amount of money, that would put the whole capital programme in danger, as my colleague has mentioned, Robin Peter to pay Paul, and it is something that we do not plan to do.
So just before I go to Councillor Boat, can I just clarify then? We're saying that the only option to plug that gap is to scrap the secondary school provision, because that's how that sounded to me. I'm looking at colleagues to see if that was their interpretation.
We're not scrapping the secondary provision in any way, shape or form. What we would be scrapping is the building of a new school to meet that sufficiency.
Councillor Boatwright Green.
I'm so confused. This is making absolutely no sense. We've got potential here to invest to save. I've now heard 3 different people explain it. I've then got a very confused series of numbers there. This isn't adding up. This is just not adding up. Thank you. I desperately was hoping that I had kept my numbers in my head. This is really now absolutely confusing, because we're actually at a point where it makes sense, because we want to get things off the revenue budget, to actually now invest in some sort of school, because we actually need to save that 16 million in home to school transport. I'm sorry, I don't understand why this is what's being put in front of me and not the other options. I'm sort of back at my original question here is, why is not one of these actually being suggested as an option? Because all of these numbers that are floating around don't seem to be actual loans, they don't seem to be actual debt. There seems to be money floating around here that we could use to actually build something. Yes, there would be a little bit of debt, but nowhere near as much. I just need to clarify, are you genuinely saying £36 million worth of debt is going to be caused by building a school? Because at one point that's what you suggested, and I'm now very confused.
Thank you. That was the cost for the 36 million is in the report, was for the 36 million pound of borrowing was for the new town road school.
Councillor Boatwright-Green, I think you want to respond to that.
Right. But at the same time, we've got money that we can use from 106 money. We've got money we can use from high needs. There were options here where what we could actually do is start to actively reduce the £16 million a year we're paying on home to school transport. So I'm sort of going back to what Councillor Cross has said here. I don't understand how we can keep going around saying that this capital spend budget is what's actually doing us in, when I know that there's £16 million of revenue going out every year. Why are we not trying to bring that down by using one of these options? I'm just very confused as to why that's not happening. 2 years, we get the money back.
A perfectly valid point. Can we have an answer to that one, I think? Perhaps that's an officer, or Councillor Wharton, if you want to. Councillor Wharton.
Okay, so the borrowing costs on £33 million, £2.75 million a year. We're not going to save that in home to school transport in 2 years by borrowing that money and building a new school. We're just fundamentally not. Those are the figures. £2.75 million a year. It will cost us to borrow £33 million to build a new school.
I'm not asking 33. If you look at these options, yeah, it'll come out about 12. All of these different options here, they won't come out at 33 million. There are other options here where it would be far less. And actually, we'd be talking, as little as 12. So I'm a little bit confused, because we would definitely save the money. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. And it's not, and this is the other point I'd like to point out with education, it's never perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but actually, the more we drill down into this, we'd actually save quite a lot of money if we actually looked at one of these options.
Fab, I don't know if we've got a disagreement maybe there or not. Furrowed brows maybe, no?
I think there's 2 matters here. There's mainstream education provision, which is the 4 FE that we need in Worcester City, and then there's a SEND school. And the funding pots for both are different, yeah? So we're talking about meeting our mainstream education sufficiency provision here with and County Hall was one option. So, as Rob's said, to do Newtown Road is going to take 33.6 million of borrowing. To do County Hall, it was 21.1 million. So those options are not viable because they will impact the whole education capital programme. The SEND school is a different option, but we still need to meet our mainstream sufficiency. So we've still got to spend the basic need, the Section 106 on mainstream. We can't switch that over to SEND. For SEND, we don't have that 24.1 million high needs capital to deliver a new SEND school on County Hall. So again, we would need to borrow.
I'm going to go to Councillor Kent and then you, Councillor Cross. Councillor Kent.
Honestly, I mean, look, we are going around in ever-decreasing circles now. I think I'd like to give Councillor Wharton a get-out-of-jail card, really. If we do build a school at County Hall and put some SEND provision there, I'm sure between us all, working collaboratively, we can help to come up with those economies of scale that makes that decision financially viable for everybody, and excellent for the residents who live in that area and moving forward. And I think really, Councillor Wharton, you will still be saving a substantial amount of money that you would have done from the new school. And I want to do a little bit of a history lesson because I've been here a while. But the only reason we were building that school at that site was because at that point in time, County Hall was a viable proposition. It's the change to the fact that County Hall, is, with its RAC and its other problems, has now become redundant, that gives this council the opportunity to change direction. And that change in direction is going to save a substantial amount of capital from the original proposal. And we've got to look to the future. I think you're taking a very, very short-term view. And you said it was 2.7 million for 33 million. What's the net budget of this council? Is it £600 million? I mean, this is a very small proportion, even on that 33 million. Now, I get that you're trying to do everything within your power to balance the books. I understand that. But you're talking about a decision here that potentially the borrowing for that school, whether it's 650,000, which is underwritten by the home to school transport additional cost, but we're talking about less than £1 million a year. This is total madness. Why are we not building that school on County Hall?
Councillor Wharton.
Yeah, I think the net budget is around about £460 million, obviously a lot of money. But what we're trying to deal with here is we're running out of cash. We will have £13 million in reserves left at the end of this year. So you're looking at that 3 million against that 13 million, not against 600 million or 400 million. And I think you're being a little bit disingenuous there. You're trying to muddy the waters. We're trying to balance a revenue budget. We've already got £15 million built into it, which we haven't got. So we're looking to make all the savings we can, which at the same time still enables us to meet sufficiency needs. And you've seen the report, and we can meet those needs. Perhaps not in a perfect way that everyone's running around in the garden thinking this is all great, but we can meet our statutory requirements and we can save money at the same time.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, does that answer your point?
No, but I've laboured it long enough and made it quite clear.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Cross in a moment, but one thing I will just ask, and I'm confused. There was a briefing from the education team where County Hall was very much considered as a viable option. What has changed in the 8 weeks or so since that briefing?
The feasibility has been completed and the costs have come in, and those costs were higher than the very first indicative generic school costs. So those costs came in to give us the clarity, and it is just REBA stage 1. They haven't been through full design, full planning. As Adam said, we don't know the full extent of highways for County Hall. So they are just REBA stage 1, coming in at 43.4 million.
Okay, I'm going to have to accept that. I think, to me, the economy... Oh,
sorry, I'm just going to have to come back on this. Highways. There were thousands of people working at County Hall, driving there. I'm not aware that thousands of pupils in a secondary school are going to be driving to the school. So I fail to see how highways is going to be any issue in terms of vehicle traffic movements. And I'd like that nipped in the bud immediately, because when you've got several thousand employees in a building that all drive, it's a little bit different than, 1,000 pupils that clearly don't.
Rachel, for the first time in this discussion, yeah.
I completely take that point. I guess the point that is being made about highways is that we don't know for any certainty, and we also know that the residents of Spetchley Road in particular do contact us on a very, very regular basis regarding traffic and transport issues and parking matters.
Fab. I'm going to go to Councillor Cross now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to come back to the point about conversion of a primary school in Worcestershire, where we have spare capacity to SEN, because this is clearly a low-cost way to meet our needs and reduce our £16 million per annum home-to-school transport cost for pupils within the HCP. And this would also boost outcomes for these pupils and therefore help reduce our future adult care burden. So I really please urge, can this be evaluated and implemented? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cross. Yes, this is looked at all the time. I went to Regency High School on last week. Regency High School is a wonderful send at secondary school, 11 to 19. The pupils, they went out to consultation over the summer to have a satellite at the Stanley Road School because they had capacity at the primary school. So they went out to consultation to reduce their age from 5 to 11 to incorporate that need. I went there specifically to pursue how that was going because they were supposed to open initially in September 25 and then it was December 2025. But the head teacher, Tanya Dorman, told me it wasn't going at all well and that wouldn't happen. But yes, the officers look at this all the time, and that is something we will consider all the time. And once again, I thank you for a very constructive input.
Would you like to make another constructive input to Councillor Cross?
Thank you. And I appreciate the positive comments and keen to support measures that will benefit our residents. So in terms of the issues that, you said the head teacher said it was not going well. I mean, how quickly is it possible to implement what seems to be a no-brainer win, an even lower cost of meeting our SEN needs, and where we do have sufficient capacity or spare capacity at primary school level? I'm just struggling to see how, what could we do better, and how could we make this happen sooner and not be waiting for a post-LGR, because our costs are here and now and rising. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. We won't be waiting for LGR and unitary of any form or other. We're actively looking at that all the time, and we will continue to do so. And they are looking, it's confidential, so I can't discuss it, but they are looking at an alternative site to Stanley Road at this very moment in time to do just what you're suggesting. Thank you.
Fab. I'm very aware that we have continued for quite a while now. I just want to go to members and non-members. If there are any closing remarks, was that a... Oh no, sorry, I thought you were indicating to talk. Any further final questions before I think we summarise, if I go in line? So Councillor Turner, anything from you?
The only thing is that obviously we're talking about the county hall site and the secondary educational needs and so on. Pulling funds from out to central funds to fund any potential project there is going to take funds away from other areas of the county, and that's what I'd be concerned about.
Anything on that one? No? Happy? Councillor Bales, anything from you?
No, thanks, Chair. I think we've made our points pretty clear about the trying to get all the facts before we make decisions. Thank you.
Certainly did. Councillor Cross, anything from you?
Look forward to action and information and details so we can actually decide. And the 6th November full council meeting, let's review this capital programme. It's going to be difficult to get the details before then. Time is against us, but we do need to act. And thank you very much.
Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I look forward, excuse me, to the sufficiency report, which is coming in February. I believe we've got a paper coming to Council on the 6th of November. Are we going to make recommendations that we hold fire on County Hall until we get to the sufficiency report in February, please?
Councillor Boatwright Green.
I would second that point.
Anything from our Cabinet members? Any of the points? Councillor Foster? No. Anything, Councillor Kent? Anything from you?
Just the one point really about, and it wasn't actually answered, in the terms of why haven't we demolished County Hall already? Have we had the quotes in for the demolition, and can we just get on with it, because it's going to save us money and prep a site ready to ensure that if we did make a decision to build a school, it would be built in time?
Penny.
So the advice we've had to date is to take the site forward as it is, but we'll review all of that advice in this next phase once we do some further market engagement. We've had some initial estimates, I would say, for the demolition. To get a full quote for that would require us putting together a detailed specification.
Councillor Kent, go on, you are.
I am sorry, but what's the business rates that we're paying on County Hall at the moment?
They do vary each year. I think they're around £500,000 a year.
And if we demolish it, what would the business rates be then?
Nothing.
I think that point has been very well made, Councillor Kent. Councillor Jenkins, anything from you?
Just to, I think, reiterate what everyone said, I think we need more time to look at this. So that is all I would suggest. Thank you.
Fab. So what I'm proposing is we take a little comfort break of 10 minutes. And when we come back, we will just sum up and go over the recommendations we will make to Cabinet on Thursday, if that's okay with everyone. Yep, fab. 10 minutes-ish. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, folks. First of all, thank you to our officers for having a really robust grilling today. I promise future ones will not be as tricky, perhaps. And thank you, of course, to our Cabinet members for your succinct answers. So I'll just go over quickly what I think we're summarising with the recommendation to Cabinet, and do feel free to jump in if you think we've missed anything. So the first one and most pressing is to ask Cabinet to reconsider this until February, when the full sufficiency has come back. That includes the proposed sort of home to school transport cost versus saving duration time. A recommendation as well to consider that the well-being aspects are as important as the economic aspects to all of this. And I'm just looking here as well, and also to compare which other projects may be able to be written off to look at perhaps making this more of a viable option. And also I think a recommendation for option 6B and all the options to have perhaps a thorough briefing of what could happen. Have I missed anything from members' points of view? Councillor Cross, is that a... You're trying to think... Of course, that was not on the fly of me at all, so I remember what I said. Number one, obviously, is to reconsider making the decision until February when we've got the full sufficiency. That includes the well-being and home school transport time, cost and mileage, to look at the well-being as a factor, not just economic, and also to look at other projects that could be written off so we can deliver a new secondary school in Worcester. Have I missed anything? Councillor Bales?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there was also the, on recommendation B, I thought it was a 1 for a minute. Just further reports are coming, so we'd have a chance to consider those as well.
Yes, I think that would be wrapped up in the full appraisal in February.
That's fine, thank you.
Someone's just told me as well a full briefing on all options across the board, not just the 3, I think, that are presented today. Have I missed anything else from the panel? No? So without further ado, thank you so much to everyone here on my right. It's been an educational day, I'm sure. Brains are fried. You are free to go and enjoy your day. Thank you, folks. Well, whilst folks are moving over, we'll just give them a couple of moments, okay? Fantastic. So we are now joined by Dave. Dave, welcome as ever to Corp and Com. So we're now on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the performance and 2025-26 in-year budget monitoring. If we could try and keep the debate shortened than our previous one, that would be terrific. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it as succinct as I can, so that's fine. Thank you, panel members. The performance summary that's on starts on page 3 of the original set of agenda papers. It covers all the information up to the end of the first quarter of this financial year. The information is also available as previously on the Our Performance page on, there we are, thank you. The Our Performance page on the website, the County Council website. So that's free for everybody to use, including residents as well. And there's also information to do with a couple of the other scrutiny panels, and also risk reports for audit and governance are there as well. Just sort of picking up on sort of main headlines and points to note. In terms of registration, the information that starts the first bit of the report, there's the usual peaks and troughs that we're seeing in terms of registration of deaths, and in terms of the percentage that are registered in 5 days, though, the local performance is very good. The target is actually 95%. What you'll see in the next report is that performance, which has been at 94% for a lot of the time in the period of this report, will go above that target. The only 2 months that we had since September, October last year where the performance has gone below 94% were April and May, and that's because of the bank holidays. And the General Register Office, they make no allowance for bank holidays when they're working the calculations for the 5 days. So local practices, the liaison work with GP practices and also with Office of Medical Examiner locally is good. The figures of it show that, and we're above the levels attained by the West Midlands region as a whole, and also by England as a whole. So that's very good and consistent level of performance. And there's also other work that they do, of course, in terms of making sure that there's appointment availability, and that's the diaries that are kept open for that, not affected at all, and ceremonies as well, and they have an income generator factor for the service, but also they're sticking to their usual, what you'd expect to see with civil partnership and wedding ceremonies, high figures in the summer, and now we're starting to see them go back down. In terms of the HR and comms ones, there is an update on from the HR team on the commentary, including some links that provide some data, comparator data from across the country. I think there's also reference to Councillor May's query at the last panel meeting, which was around, I think, whether musculoskeletal related sickness was higher now than stress. It is. That the figures aren't included separately in that. If it needed to be taken away, I'm happy to pick up queries to do with the HR indicators. I wouldn't be able to have the expertise to give the answers on those. But hopefully the commentary that's been updated is helpful on those. Moving quickly through, to say, try and keep it brief for you, but for libraries within communities, and that starts on page 11 of the agenda. There's information on the visits and issues, slightly down April to June's figures for both, really, compared with the same quarter last year. But I expect that by the end of the year, the financial year, we'll see the visits figures will be higher than in 24-5. And issues, I think, will be the same. We're still seeing very strong e-book, e-offer, that's e-books, e-audiobooks, e-magazines and e-newspapers, very healthy figures on those. We're absolutely entitled to include those in the overall issues figures. That represents the digital shift over the last few years for all libraries. And where we stand in comparison with other authorities, Libraries Connected, we did a submission actually of our data in August to Libraries Connected, and they're collating a more up-to-date data set from across England for library services, so we'll be able to update some of the comparator information. But at the moment, our visits figures for libraries month on month are usually around, at worst, about 66% of pre-COVID levels, 70% generally, and that's pretty much in keeping with the national level. But issues, we're above. Some of our monthly figures are actually above the levels that we attained before COVID, whereas a lot of authorities would probably say around 90% of pre-COVID issues levels is where they're at. So that's good. But we obviously have again, it was raised at the last panel, but a query then around the stock rotation, so the review of what books are being acquired, the latest bestsellers. So we've got a lot of inquiries about the availability of, for example, the new Richard Osman book. So we've got to make sure we've got enough copies of that coming in very, very quickly. So there's all the reviews there around the use of stock and stock rotation around libraries. We'll have as well for the panel next time, there'll be the information around Summer Reading Challenge. That's been submitted to the Reading Agency, but I can tell you that there are some very good figures on that in terms of participation and achievement levels on that. The information relating to County Museum, not too much. That starts on page 14 as a little graph on the next page, and not too much change relative to the same quarter last year, just a fraction down. So we've built in the indicator just a little bit of leeway to say, look, it's not too far down. We'll flag it as amber, and usually the museum would see very good visits figures in August, September time. Has been repeated, I think. So we'll be reporting those figures for you next time. It's not a real terms financial comparison there, but there is the information in there around admission income and also retail income. And the other stream that they have, of course, is through outreach activities in schools, some of which are out of county. So that will have kicked off again in the new academic year, of course. There's a little bit in there about the future activity. Museums have a regular plan of programmes, especially in the lead up to Christmas. So you always have a family weekend, first weekend of December, which is well attended. That's being planned, being advertised at the moment. And then there's the planning that's going on around a new strategic plan for the museum's Worcestershire service, which I think went to the Joint Museums Service Committee in September. And of course that's chaired by Worcester City at the moment, but with a presence for, I think, Hannah Perrott is the representative for us on that panel. And then just moving through pretty much just quickly, countryside standards achieved dipped in that first quarter, and that was really, there was one major incident of fly tipping at one of the sites, been addressed, and then the programmes of work, the normal ones, and responding to people's queries and inquiries about where perhaps they've spotted something with signage or the furniture, the play areas, that's carried on. So the improvement, there'll be a marked improvement for the Q2 percentage. It'll be back above target, I think. And in any case, none of the issues that were identified in the summer prevented all of the 3 sites from attaining their green flag status. And the same for the district councils as well. All of the sites run by the districts which had green flag status, they've all retained their status for the 25-6. And the last was really on road safety, the bikeability, and the figures there that sort of start on page 17, page 18. We had some very good figures again in April to June quarter. They're usually the highest for each of the years, below last year's levels, which were very good. But I understand, I think that the number of bookings that we probably had for early in the new academic year will see us probably being able to post better figures in the next couple of quarters than we had last year. So there's every chance we could actually see the figures for the on-road practicing and experience exceeding last year's figure, and I think that's more than likely for all the other levels of bikeability, the introductory levels and the off-road practicing and knowledge and experience there for children. And again, I think there's been a few family sessions. So they're conscious that it's always seems to be geared towards children, but of course we want the ability for families to learn together as well. So last year, for example, there was some things set up at County Hall which were run as family events for families to sign up to. So again, it's another indicator which has its distinct seasonal patterns for all of the levels of bikeability usage, and they're in evidence this year with some healthy figures. I hope that's a quick enough run through, Chair. But
as ever, that was the most comprehensive report ever. You gold star all around. Thank you. Panel, who would like to kick us off with some scrutiny on this one? I know, Councillor Bales, you had a query earlier, didn't you?
Yes, and thank you for that. Just a quick point and a request really on page 8 regarding sickness rates. Do you think we need actually long-term sickness data? I can't quite understand if it's in there or not. I think it would be, personally, because this will continue as we go through the local government reform progress as it progresses. But so that's a request really, but more importantly to me, we've got staff engagement going down, we've got staff sickness going up, and we've got staff turnover going up. But whilst agency staff percentage of the wage bill is steady, that will go up as LGR increases and the sickness goes up, everything. So it appears to me that we're probably not engaging with the staff. I'm probably wrong, but we've got an issue there, and how are we going to deal with that issue of things going up and the wage bill going up? Thank you.
I know you perhaps may not be able to answer that one succinct, but over to you, Dave.
Chair, I can certainly pick up the one on the how we'll display the information in the report. And actually, when I was talking with Jules Perks last week in HR, what we're going to do is make it separated out, the long-term and short-term sickness. So you're right, it is included in the figures, but we're going back, as it were. There's nothing new under the sun, is there? But to go back to what we did before to show that for you. I think there's a performance indicator in the system which does amalgamate them, but it's no problem to separate it out. And they would, I think, look at it in terms as well of the short and long term. So we will do that for this.
Fab, thank you. Any follow-up there, Councillor Bales? Are you happy?
See long-term sickness, but it's just really what are we going to do about all the other things going in the wrong direction? I'm concerned with LGR going on, that things are going down, and how are we going to address those? That's
That perhaps more of a HR question for next committee, if we could try and make sure someone from HR is here.
We can feed that back for you.
Even better,
yeah, would it be
feed it back?
Yeah, I think that's fair. If we could have an action plan of how we're going to deal with that. I know in here we have future activities, but to me it's not specific enough to ask to give us those. So thank you for that, Chair.
Fab. Councillor Cross, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm keen to ask about the bikeability training. So level 2, a dramatic or notable drop. I'd be keen to hear actual sort of data or measures that we're doing to improve on this, and any early signs of turnaround. And a question, please. Could we also include perhaps sort of county performance or works undertaken and results thereof of minor works projects that make infrastructure improvements which are needed to boost active travel measures such as cycling and meet our obligations?
Rachel, is that your area? Yeah.
I can't pick up on the bikeability, and Dave may be able to add to that, but in terms of active travel schemes and the like, absolutely that gets picked up at the Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel meetings, and I believe it's an item on the forward plan for the Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel. I can't recall the date for when active travel is being reviewed, but I recall it being on the plan.
Amazing. I think we might have that date whispered in my ear in the next couple of moments. I'll go to Dave on the bikeability, and then we might have a date for you, Councillor Cross.
I'm not sure it was a major factor in the drop. Last year's figures were certainly by some distance the best ever for that particular quarter, and the number of bookings hasn't collapsed, I don't think, from schools in this time. There was one vacancy, one of the supervisors, I think it's been filled, the post, I think effective in September, so that it shouldn't have a big effect of that, because the priority is that other staff would cover that, and bikeability sessions are given priority. So if there's something else that somebody has to put to one side, they'll at the expense of doing a bikeability session and maintaining the booking, then that will be done. I can go away and find out from Jackie and the team if there were other factors, but I think the vacancy would have been a factor, but not by no means the whole explanation. And last year being well above average, again, we'd like to be getting at that level all the time, because it is traditionally, because of the good weather and so on, it is a term where we always see a lot of high figures.
I have sadly not got a date for you, but it is on the work programme. It is a TBC, so I'm sure an email off to the chair will get that pushed onto the agenda for you, Councillor Cross. Councillor May, I have you next.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you as always, Dave, for taking us through this report. This question really isn't for you, but I do think it is for a future meeting of this Corporate and Communities panel. I'd like to see more of an in-depth dive into the sickness figures, because I note that we've, for musculoskeletal, we're looking at introducing physiotherapy provision, but my understanding was historically we've already done this. So I'd like to know where we are with that service delivery, please, and also the other actions. I'd like a bit more explanation to the Employee Assistance Programme too, if I may, Chairman. Thank you.
Of course, I think we've noted that down, and we'll come to the work programme later, I'm sure. Anyone else have any questions for Dave on this report? Dave, I think you've got off lightly. I think they are happy. Thank you so much. If there's anything else you want to add before...
Chair, there was one, and it was noticed, I think it was Vice Chair at the last meeting, there was a query about the visits figures for Evesham Library, and it was the fact that they were very, very good, and it seems to have they collapsed, and they haven't. I should have remembered this at the time. Just before COVID, we noticed that there were some figures for Evesham Library, and as where the people counters were in Evesham Library, I think it was the Oat Street counter was either double counting or it had taken a bash and it was giving some strange readings. It wasn't picked up, and that was partly my fault. And then there was a figure that was published, so we stuck with that figure. So the figure for in 1920 was quite high, whereas the ones since then have all been much more consistent, much more accurate. So it's not the case that Evesham has suddenly experienced a terrible drop. If anything, it's maintained that level that it had sort of since we got back to normal with libraries from 21-2 really after the pandemic.
Thank you, and I'll make sure that gets to Councillor Baffiday one way or another. I don't know if you're staying with us for the next item, are you? You, fantastic, the enthusiasm there. So, straight over to our other colleagues here to take us through the next item on our agenda.
Thank you, Chair. And I am minded that the panel have had a very long morning, so I won't bore you intensely with 19 slides on finance. But what I will do is very briefly echo the point of my Cabinet member this morning relating to the financial position, which is being balanced by a £15 million draft use of reserves. At Q1, we're in a slightly better position, and we think we will only be using approximately 11.6 million of this 15 million. But we are still predicated on using 33.6 million of exceptional financial support from central government, which in itself comes in the form of borrowing or use of capital receipts. It's not cash, unfortunately, that government gives us to spend. It's permission to borrow. We're seeing overspends in our demand-led services of adults and children's social care. Those have been partially mitigated by forecast underspends in corporate services, E&I and other areas. Again, I won't go into massive detail. The majority of our savings are being delivered, and at the end of Q1, 82% of them are RAG-rated green. And giving a little bit of a teaser, but I think you'll find that number going up as we get into Q2. Again, echoing what was said this morning, the level of reserves that the Council has is decreasing, and our reserves are held for a number of purposes. Some of them are grant reserves where we have money in advance of spending. Some of them are reserves relating to schools, insurance and other ring-fenced purposes. And the only available reserves that we've got that we can spend on unforeseen circumstances are those in the risk reserve. So 3/4 of the way down the table on the slide entitled Reserves on the right-hand side, you'll see a figure of 13.059. That's the figure that Councillor Wharton was speaking about this morning relating to the amount of reserves available for us to spend on unforeseen circumstances. My slide number 7, I'm not sure what page it is in your pack, but my slide number 7 talks about DSG, the Dedicated Schools Grant, and the impact on the high needs expenditure. And this is an area that is obviously an issue for a number of local authorities, including Worcestershire. We're then talking about the capital position, and as you'll know from the Cabinet report that has been presented so far, in October, we are looking at those schemes funded by borrowing with the intention to having a look at whether we can rephase them, delay them, or indeed stop them to enable us to make some savings in our revenue account. We talked quite a lot about that, the revenue implications of capital this morning. So that brings us on to the areas specific to this panel. And I'm very pleased to say that all of the areas specific to this panel are underspending their budget for 25-26. Central Services is showing an underspend of 300,000. That's in the main due to financial services. We have a number of posts that we're holding vacant to enable us to deliver an underspending service, but every service within Central Services is either holding the line, spending at budget, or underspending. Key headlines you'll see, majority of our areas are we have what's called a vacancy management target, where we are expected to make savings during the financial year when people are not in post. So when people leave, there's a time lag between those people leaving and new people starting. So we're already inherent in making savings in our budget before we start. All of our services are delivering that time lag, but also some areas are making more of a saving by holding posts vacant, including finance and HR. Corporate budgets, what I term below the line budgets, they're outside the service budgets. These are borrowing budgets, the cost of debt and repaying that borrowing. We are underspending on that at the moment due to delays in the capital programme for various reasons, and also due to the fact that we had significant money in advance of needing to be spent. So some central government grants are given to us in advance before we've spent it, and what we can do then is loan that out to other local authorities or indeed on the money market, and we earn interest from doing that. And so we've been able to do that quite a lot this financial year already. Short term loaning out obviously, but it does generate income for us in the form of interest. So we are underspending on that. This financial year was the first year in a long time where we identified a corporate contingency. So that contingency, most local authorities have it. It's for things, again, that are unforeseen, and it avoids us having to always draw down from reserves. And we identified a 14.8 million corporate contingency this year. And we're not expecting to spend that in full. So that's why there's just under £9 million underspent on that corporate contingency. So all of that in total shows that our below the line, our corporate budgets, are demonstrating an underspend that helps to offset the overall overspend of the council's service delivery in adults and children's. And community services, as always with community services, extremely well managed financially and operationally, and we're showing a marginal underspend this financial year, mainly due to our registration services, which is generating additional income through births and marriages particularly. So that was, I hope, a very quick run through the financial position for the end of Q1, but as always, happy to take financial questions as you see fit, Chair.
I know there will be financial questions. Councillor Cross, straight in there.
Thank you, and I hope it's not a daft one. But on slide 14, you talk about the unspent or not yet spent capital and the money that we can lend out and achieve some revenue from that. Just wondering, how much does this typically generate, please?
We budget for around about £1 million worth of income from lending money out. We're overshooting that, so we're generating more than we expect. So there's always an expectation that we're going to earn interest on lending out money. We pay interest on money that we have to borrow, and we earn interest on money that we have to lend out. In the past, we've netted those two off, but what we like to be able to show now is the total of the spend and the total of the income. So on average, it's about £1 million, but we're overachieving on that this year.
Councillor Cross.
Thank you very much. And is the use of that money restricted or earmarked in any particular way, or is it available?
It's not ring-fenced. It's cash that we can use as a local authority broadly for anything. But the budget for it is below the line. It helps to fund the overs and underspends. So we have a budget for the income, we have the actual income, and it's cash to us to broadly do what we wish with, within reason and morals and all the rest of it. But there's no ring fences on it.
Anyone else? Councillor Bales? Sorry, Councillor Turner.
Yes, this money that's lent out, is it immediately available as a contingency, or is it tied up for what period of time?
It depends, is the answer. We do a treasury management forecast every day, which is how much money do we expect to be getting in the next day, week, month, year? How much money do we expect to be spending in the next day, week, month, year? So if, for example, we've had, let's say, a government grant come in for 50 million, as we did for the A38, we know that we're probably not going to spend £50 million in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. But we might spend it on the 28th of the month when our payroll goes out. So every day there's decisions made about how much money do we need tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, how much cash have we got. So basically we lend and borrow on a daily basis. And we can lend out overnight. We can actually just lend for a day to earn interest. We can lend out for 6 months. We can lend out for 12 months. And everything is done on an assessment of cash flows in and out. But this is done every day by an excellent team that we've got in finance.
Councillor Turner, yeah.
Yeah, I can see people to my left here thinking that, we've got spare money rolling around in the system here that could be better spent elsewhere. And obviously it is very financially prudent to have contingencies in place because you never know what is around the corner. So answering the question, if you did need to call it in for emergency funds, and it's always best to have those contingencies in place. So thanks very much for the answer.
Anyone? Councillor Bales.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Councillor Turner. I think we always do need contingencies, so I'm not sure we can we disagree. Well, anyway, just going back to slide 10, and it's something which I raised at the last meeting and never really got an answer. Redditch Railway Station and the other railway schemes and those schemes in there. Redditch Railway Station is going to go to full council to be not going forward with, and the reasons given were because of a sewer which was found by the railway line, which put up the cost, so it made it too expensive to do it, plus the timescales. The question I asked then was, what was that additional cost, so we as full council and councillors can make that decision whether it's right or wrong, because obviously it's going forward, and secondly, the timescales with it, and how come we've just now found a sewer underneath a railway line. So that's that. So I'd like those questions. And then secondly, on the other railway schemes, there were a number of schemes which were again not going forward, and they were outlined to us in the report. One of them, the railway station, didn't exist, and the other was Old Church Station, which I didn't think we had any improvements going forward in there. So can we have a list of those railway schemes and the cost put against them, if we could do that? And I know Redditch Railway Station is going to have some improvements to the access to it, so that'll offlay the 12 million, but just what is that and what is the cost of that? So when it does come to us, we've got the full facts in front of us, Chair. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Rachel, you have been pointed at as the person to ask. Thank your colleague Steph Legg. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. I'll take Redditch Station first. So Redditch Station was a cabinet decision many years ago, actually, as part of the corporate plan to deliver the station, and the money was added to the capital programme at that point in time. As the project progressed, and as is often the case, unfortunately, unidentified or slightly different utilities are found when you do further work. So the sewer was found, and it's directly under the existing station. So there was additional work done to say, what are some of the options? Well, one of the options was to build over. One of the options is to divert the sewer. The other is to rebuild the station slightly in a different place, which isn't that logical if you know the area. Those options have been discussed because of the delay as well. So it's not just the cost of the sewer, but the cost of delay. We're probably looking at up towards about a £5 million additional cost associated with the station. One of the the current cabinet have taken the opportunity, I guess, to look at all of the capital programme and say, well, what are the priorities? What are the things that as cabinet they want to progress, and the things where, especially with something like Redditch Station, where we haven't spent a significant amount of money. I've got Steph in my ear who'll say, but you have spent some money, Rachel. Of course, we have spent some money, but it's not as if we've spent multi-millions of pounds on the station. There is that logical opportunity to say, do we want to continue? So that's where we're at with Redditch Station. In terms of the associated scheme with some of the public realm in the area, the proposal is to have a scheme that's of the order of £1 million. We've got some more work to do to work that up, and that will then be presented to the cabinet member. The intention would be to use local transport grant for that rather than county council borrowing. So hopefully that covers Redditch Station. In terms of the other stations, absolutely, we can provide a list of those stations that were identified when that pot of money was originally put together. Need to make it clear that that pot of money was never to do physical works necessarily. It was primarily to look at feasibility. So what could we do to improve access to Droitwich Station? What could we do to improve access and car parking at Alvechurch Station, for example? It wasn't necessarily to do the physical works.
Rachel, I'll tell you now what we've done. I've been for the last 2.5 years since I've been in post as a district councillor, finally got Network Rail to do some work there. Unfortunately, they were supposed to be doing some aeration works in the soil to stop it flooding. We've just had photos this morning, and I'm onto Network Rail immediately as I get back in West Midlands, that it's got even worse, and they've done the remedial work. So, you know, can we have some dialogue with yourselves on that regarding the car park, because it is just absolute disgrace since we've had it for 14 years. 2 years of hard work from me isn't getting, well, I thought it got us somewhere, but I've got a feeling after last night's rain, I'm not sure it has. So if we could take that offline.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there, Councillor Berthing. I'm sure Rachel will enjoy an email and maybe a coffee between the two of you to discuss. Councillor May, you caught my eye.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And building on what Councillor Bales has just said, the other aspects of this council were the accessibility to Bromsgrove Station and the Alvechurch Station, the improvements there. We still need to be aware of what the requirements are off the back of the new housing growth, because what I'm concerned about is that we don't do that master planning, that bigger picture planning, and unless we have a level of understanding of the level of investment and what we're trying to achieve, when we speak about a multimodal shift around public transport and active travel, it's really, really important. So my concerns are, Rachel, if we're not going to do this piece of work, do we have a programme of works that potentially could have been activated or could be as part of the housing growth that we sadly all now face? Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point, and as part of the local transport plan, which we know we've not had the guidance from central government, but we are going to review our local transport plan. Local transport plan version 4 has been in place for quite some time now, so we are going to do that work. We've already started some of that to get to local transport plan 5. And we know that there are opportunities around local transport grant funding that the council has been nominally allocated by the DFT. So we've got some funding over the next 4 years. Quite a considerable portion of that is not committed. And that can be used for things like access to rail. Can't be used for hard engineering in rail, but it can be used for things around access to rail.
Thank you, that's really important, because I think accessibility is the biggest challenge we face. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Any from non-members? Councillor Jenkins, are you happy? No, we've got a shake of the head. Folks, that's brilliant. Look at that. We've done it. I will thank the officers now. We've just got to refresh the work programme with the committee. So if I could hold you for just 2 minutes. Councillor Bowright-Green, you are free to go as ever. Thank you, folks. We'll just give it a couple of moments. Thank you. So I've just been reminded we did do an email round robin about the work programme. I don't think there was too many queries around that. The only other one we've picked up on is the employee assistance programme and sickness. I think it is important doing that because we keep coming back to this employee wellbeing sickness conversation. So I do think I'm just looking. November we are due to look at in-year budgeting. I'm happy to put it onto the November agenda if we want to do a... We've got libraries, haven't we? Yes. So libraries is on our agenda for November, which should be quite a substantive item. Do we want to do libraries and sickness, or do we want to push? I've got nods there. I'm looking at my...
What about the issue as far as turnover of staff as well? Because that's gone up from 3.75% up to 5.72% in quarter two.
Yes, staffing as in the round would be quite good, and if we ask officers to have a particular focus on sickness, staff turnover, retention, things like that, let's do a bit of a dive on that one alongside the libraries. Are people happy with that? Yeah. Folks, thank you so much for your patience and your questioning today. I know sometimes it felt long-winded, but I think it was very necessary, so thank you.